So let's get started with African literature. Now, let me start with very simple things. Tell me, is this true or false? When you think of African literature, you can also think of literature. Yes. Okay. You also think of literature that was written in European languages such as French and English too. Is this true? Okay.
Hey, no.
Okay, just a second. Let me mute.
Are you?
Okay. Is this true? Can you all hear me? African literature also includes African literature, literature about Africa written in French and English, other than African languages. Yes, it is true. The chat is open to all, so you can give your response to everyone. Okay. Okay. People are joining in, but that's why I'm starting with something simpler. Okay. Yes. Please type to everyone. Okay. So now, when we talk about literature in English from Africa, can you tell me Love in Ebony, a West African romance is by, do you remember who wrote it? Love in Ebony, a West African romance, which came out in 1932. It is by Charles Cooper. Okay, Charles Cooper. Yes, that's right. Cooper. Okay. What about the palm wine drinker and his dead palm wine tapster in the Dead Towns? Simple things, but still. Yes, that's right. Okay. Let me also check YouTube. Okay, people are joining in. Yes. Yes. Your answers are correct. Amos Tutuola. Okay, great. Now, the novel by Oliver Schreiner, which is known as the first great South African novel. You might know this. The first great South African novel is, yes. YouTube babies, are you also typing? Okay. Yes, it is The Story of an African Farm, 1883. Correct. Now, with which work of Alan Paton did African literature get international attention? Yes. Again, another very familiar work, Cry the Beloved Country. In which year did it come out? Cry the Beloved Country came out in 1948. Yes, that's correct. Who is a psychiatrist from Martinique who became famous for his work Black Skin, White Mask? Who is the psychiatrist from Martinique who became famous through his work Black Skin, White Mask? R. Frantz Fanon. In which year did Black Skin, White Mask come out? In French? Yes, 1952. Yes, that's correct. Okay. Now, A work by Alan Paton, which contains parallel life stories, letters, speeches, news, legal records. Do you know which work is this? It's an historical fiction that gives, yes, that gives an accurate account of the resistance movement in South Africa in the 1960s. Ah, But Your Land is Beautiful. In which year did this come out? Your Land is Beautiful came out in which year? Yes, 1981. That's right. 1981. Correct. Now, you have the characters Jarvis, Khumalo, and Olin. Same. Jarvis, yes, again. Khumalo are all characters in Cry the Beloved Country. Okay. Now, which work of Frantz Fanon defends the right of colonized people to use violence for struggle for independence? And the preface to this work was written by Sartre. This work was also banned in France. Yes, I can see the answers. I'm also looking for answers on YouTube. Yes, it is The Wretched of the Earth, 1961. 1961. Okay. Tell me, in which year did Toward the African Revolution come out? The African Revolution. Yes, it came out in 1964. 1964. Yes. Okay. Whose autobiography is the famous work known as The African Child or The Dark Child, L'Enfant Noir, which came out in 1953? Okay, correct. Waiting for more answers. Yes, it is Camera Le. That's right. Okay. Now, tell me, from which country are these writers? Flora Nwapa, Christopher Okigbo are all writers from John Pepper Clark, Ken Saro-Wiwa. They're all from Benokri, are all from Nigeria. That's right. They're all from Nigeria. Yes. What about Alan Paton, Nadine Gordimer, André Brink, Bessie Head, Coetzee are all South African writers. South Africa. Yes, that's right. They're all from South Armah is from Armah is from Ghana. Yes, that's right. Ghana. I hope all of you are typing. Okay. Easy. Tell me, who are the founders of the Negritude movement? The founding members. Yes. 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 There's Senghor, Césaire, and Damas. The word negritude means? Negritude means? Yes. Negro-ness. That's right. Now, a very famous writer who was awarded the Man Booker Prize in June 2007. He's an African writer who lived in US and he died in Boston in United States. Yes. Here are Chinua Achebe. Achebe was awarded the Man Booker International Prize in 2007. 7. That's correct. Okay. Which is the African trilogy of very famous trilogy by Achebe? Yes. Yes. Things Fall Apart? Yeah. Waiting for more answers. Things Fall Apart. No Longer at Ease, Arrow of God. In which year did No Longer at Ease come out? No Longer at Ease came out in which year? Very good. It is 1960. 1960. Okay. Now, in which work of Achebe do you see that it begins with a war between Umaro and Ukperi? These are two regions. It begins with a war between Umaro and Ukperi. Yes, you're right. Arrow of God. It came out in 1964. Correct. 1964. Okay. Now, who is the Egyptian writer who won the Nobel Prize in 1988? 1988. Yes. Yes. Can I have some more answers? He's also regarded as one of the contemporary writers of Arabic literature who explores themes of existentialism. That's correct. Naguib Mahfouz. Naguib Mahfouz. Yes. I see answers on both Zoom and YouTube, so that's good. Can you name the Cairo trilogy? The Cairo trilogy, the works that consist the Cairo trilogy. Yes, that's correct. I see one of the names. Yes. Okay. It is Palace Walk, Palace of Desire, Sugar Street. Correct. These are all titled with what names? These are all names of? Yes. Yes. These are all names of the, with street names. Okay. Now, whose first collection of short stories is called Face to Face? Whose first collection of short stories is called Face to Face, correct? It came out in 1949. Yes. Yes. It is Nadim Gordimer. Nadim Gordimer. In which novel of Gordimer do you have reference to actual events and people like Nelson Mandela and the 1976 Soweto uprising? Yes. I see one person has answered. I'll repeat. Which work of Gordimer has reference to actual people and events like Nelson Mandela and the 1976 Soweto uprising? It is Berger's Daughter. Berger's Daughter, which came out in which year did it come out? Yes. Correct. 1979. Okay. Now, tell me which work is this? It has, and by which author is this? It has a theme of how rural societies in modern Sudan are affected by European colonialism and modernization. Which is the work and by whom? It has a theme of how rural societies in modern Sudan are affected by European colonialism and modernization. Correct. Yes. Akhila, you're right. Yes. It is Seasons of Migration to the North, 1966, by Taib Saleh. Seasons of Migration to the North, 1966, Taib Saleh. Okay. Now, who is the Nigerian author called the mother of modern African literature? Nigerian author called the mother of modern African literature. Yes. That is correct. Flora Nwapa. Flora Nwapa. Okay. Now, in which of her novels do you see an Igbo woman who tells the story of which is the story of a woman's desire to be a mother? Yes. An Igbo tells the story of a woman's desire to be a mother. Yes, it is Efuru. Efuru. Which year did this work come out? Yes. 1966. Again, correct. Okay. Now, let me ask you about another work by her. This is the story about the trials and tribulations of Nigerian women from their childhood through their adult lives. Can you guess which work this is? It came out in 1986. Yes. Women are different. Women are different. Correct. Cassava Songs and Rice Song came out in which year? Cassava Song and Rice Song, poems by her, came out in 1986. Correct. Correct. Okay. Now, who was the Nigerian poet and activist who was killed in the battle for Biafra against the Nigerian movement of the 1960s Civil War? Nigerian poet and activist killed in battle for Biafra against the Nigerian movement of the 1960s Civil War is? Yes, I can see many of you are answering. Waiting for some answers on YouTube as well. Yes, that's correct. Christopher Okigbo. Christopher Okigbo. Yeah. Now, which are the Port Elizabeth plays by Athol Fugard? Port Elizabeth plays by Athol Fugard are? Yes. 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 Blood Knot, Hello and Goodbye, and Bossman and Lena. Correct. Okay. Yes. I can see answers in Hindi as well. Okay. I had asked for Port Elizabeth Place by Athol Fugard. Someone asked me to repeat the question. Okay. Moving on. Now, who was the first person in Africa to be awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature? And in which year? The first person to be awarded Nobel Prize in Africa in literature. And in which year? Correct. Wole Soyinka in 1986. 1986. That's right. Okay. Now, tell me which work by him is this. You have details of how Baruka, a crafty man, fights with the modern Lakunle over the right to marry Sidi. Yes, that's right. Correct. Yes. It emphasizes the theme of the corrupted African culture. The play takes place on a Sunday and is divided into 3 parts. Which are the 3 parts? So the play is The Lion and the Jewel. You're all right. The Lion and the Jewel. You're all right. Now, it is also divided into 3 parts. Can you name the people are already naming it? Can all of you name the 3 parts? Yes. Morning, noon, and night. Correct. Now, yes. Okay. In which play do you see the unveiling of the rotten aspects of the Nigerian society? And Soyinka also warns the people as they are on the brink of independence. Can any of you tell me? Yes. A Dance of the Forest, 1960. 1960. Okay. Now, which work of Soyinka was conceived during his imprisonment in the Nigerian Civil War? It has close links to the theater of the absurd. And it is the story of Dr. Beru. Yes. Yes. I'll repeat. It was conceived during Soyinka's imprisonment in the at the time of the Nigerian Civil War. The play has close links to theater of absurd, and you have Dr. Biro, a corrupt specialist in this work, in this play. It is Madmen and Specialists, came out in 1970. 1970, correct. Okay. Now, tell me, can you name the poetry collection which has a series of mythological poems that feature Yoruba terminology and display subtle manipulation of words, images, and idioms? Words, yes, it is correct. Can I also see answers on YouTube? Yes. Idandre and Other Poems. It came out in 1967. Correct. Okay. Now, which work by André Brink was the first Afrikaans book to be banned by the South African government? As you know, Afrikaans is the daughter language of Dutch. The white people in Africa use it. Yes, that's correct. I see one person has answered. Yes. It is Kenneth Van Die Ant. Kenneth Van Die Ant. It came out in 1973. Correct. Now, which work of André Brink was shortlisted for the Booker Prize for fiction? The narrator is Martin Minhart. Martin Minhart is the narrator. This work, again by André Brink, was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. Yes, you're right. Rumors of Rain, 1978. Correct. Okay. In which novel by Brink do you have Christine, a white scholar who goes to South Africa to visit her grandmother? She learns to see Africa as her home country and learns that it is changing for the better. I'll repeat. We have the character Christine, who's a white scholar who goes to South Africa to meet her grandmother. And she sees the country as her home and realizes that it's changing for the better. Yes. Imaginings of Sand, 1996. Correct. Correct. Now, who used the pseudonym J.P. Clark Beckerdermo? Whose pseudonym is J.P. Clark Beck? Yes, it is. Beckerdermo is the pseudonym of John Pepper Clark. Yeah, I gave you the name. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. Now, John Pepper Clark is also known for founding the Journal of Creative Writing by Africans and West Indians, along with other famous writers. What is the name of this journal? I can already see answers. The Journal of Creative Writing by Africans and West Indians, founded in 1957. Yes, it is Black Orpheus. That's right. Black Orpheus. In which year did The Raft come out, which is his finest drama, where four men are adrift in a river, which is metaphoric of human predicament. 1978. The Raft, correct. Okay. Who is considered, can you guess who this writer is? She's considered Botswana's most influential writer. She's noted for her novels, short fiction, yes, autobiographical works. She was also awarded the South Africa Order of Ikhamanga in gold for her exceptional contribution to literature and social change. Yes. It is Bessie Head. Bessie Head. Correct. Is it true that she was also in exile for some time? Is it true that Bessie Head also went in exile for some time? Yes, it is true. Do you know many of her works are set in a place in Africa, in a village. Do you know the name of this village? Yes. Works like When Rain Clouds Gather, Maru, A Question of Power. All these works are set in a village. Yes, it is Saro-Wiwa. That's right. Okay, Saro-Wiwa. Now, in which work do you have, by Bessie Head, do you have an orphaned Masarwa girl who comes to Dilepe to teach? Yes. An orphaned Masarwa girls who comes to Dilepe to teach. It is Maru. Maru. It came out in 1971. 1971. Correct. Now, tell me who is this writer? Maru, M-A-R-U. That's the name of the work. Tell me, who is this person? This person embraced Fanonist Marxism and subsequently renounced English and Christianity and even changed his name because he thought his name was colonialist. Who was this? Yes, it is our Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o is from which country? Correct. He's from Kenya. And he started to write in his native languages, Kikuyu and Swahili. Okay. Now, which play caused him to be imprisoned and because of which he had to go in exile for 22 years? Do you know which play of Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o caused him to go into exile for almost 22 years, and he was also imprisoned? You can tell me the English title also. Yes, it is his 1977 play. Nagahika Nadinda. I will marry when I want. I will marry, yes, when I want. Okay. Now, in which work do you see the story of the separation of two neighboring villages, again by Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o of Kenya, separation of two neighboring villages of 1977. I Will Marry When I Want came out in 1977. Now, tell me which is this work? Story of the separation of two neighboring rivers of Kenya caused by difference in faith, with the Mama uprising as its background. The River Between. The River Between, 1965. Okay, 1965. Now, tell me which work by him is this? It is set against the post-colonial era in Kenya, which is criticized. It is a caustic satire where the devil is put on the cross instead of Jesus. It was written in prison. Yes, it's a caustic satire, which means it is very bitter. Devil on the cross. Devil on the cross. It came out in 1980. 1980. Okay. In which year did Weep Not Child come out? Weep Not Child came out in which year? Yes. Yes, 1964. Correct, 1964. Now, which work is set in the imaginary Free Republic of Aruria, autocratically governed by one man known only as the ruler? Which work by Thiong'o is set in an imaginary Free Republic of Aruria, which is autocratically governed by a man known as the ruler? Yes, you're all right. It is Wizard of the Crow, 2006. Okay. Okay. Now, tell me, who is the Ghanaian writer best known for his novel, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born? Yes. No, he's a writer from Ghana. He's best known for his work, his novel, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, which came out in 1968. It is Aikoi Armah. Aikoi Armah. Yes, that's right. Okay. Now, I'm sure all of you know, I'm sure all of you know this. Who was the second South African after Nadine Gordimer to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature? Yes. 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 It is J.M. Coetzee. In which year? In the year? Yes. 2003. Correct. Correct. Yes. Okay. In which year did Duskland by Coetzee come out? In which year was Duskland published? Dusklands. 1974. Correct. It consists of two novels, two separate stories. Which are the two parts of it? Can you name the titles? Duskland has two stories. The first one is and the second one. Can you give me the names? Yes. Yes. The first one is Vietnam Project. And the second one is, yes, the narrative of Jacobus Coetzee. Okay. Okay. Which work of Coetzee won the Booker Prize in 1983? 1983. Yes, that's right. Life and Times of Michael K. Where do we see the protagonist, Susan Barton? Story written from the perspective of Susan Barton, who lands on the same island as our Robinson Crusoe. Yes, it is 4. It is 4. Okay. Now, in which work of his do you have? It is a fictional work featuring Fyodor Dostoevsky as its protagonist. Dostoevsky as a protagonist. Yes, it is The Master of Petersburg. The Master of Petersburg. It came out in which year did it come out? 1994. Okay. Tell me, where do you have the character David Lurie? David Lurie. Yes. What about Senor C? Sorry, David Lurie is Disgrace. 1999. And Senor C is Diary of a Bad Year. 2007. Correct. Okay. What's the name of Lurie's daughter in Disgrace? In Disgrace, Lurie's daughter is Lucy, right? Lucy. Yes, Lucy. Correct. Lucy. Yeah. Now, who wrote The Childhood of Jesus, which is a novel which came out in 2013? Who wrote The Childhood of Jesus, a novel which came out in 2013? Correct. It is correct. It is Coetzee. Can you name the 3 fictionalized autobiographies of Coetzee? Any one, at least? Yes, that's right. Fictionalized autobiographies. Yes, there's Boyhood, there's Youth, and there is Summertime. Okay. Tell me, who was the Nigerian poet, playwright, novelist, and environmentalist who at the peak of non-violent campaign was tried for allegedly masterminding the murder of some Igoni chiefs and was hanged. This person was hanged in 1995. Yes. When I said the first word itself, some of you had answered. It is Ken Saro-Wiwa. Ken Saro-Wiwa was a Nigerian poet, playwright, and novelist who was hanged to death in 1995. Okay. Tell me, who is a poet and playwright from Ghana, one of whose works is, whose works focus on the predicaments of modern African women due to Western influences and restrictions of traditional society. Correct. I'll repeat. Poet and playwright from Ghana, whose works focus on predicaments of modern African women due to the Western influences and the restrictions in traditional African society. It is Armah Aidoo. That's right. What is her first novel on Bean to Dilemma, which is also semi-autobiographical? Bean to Dilemma. Bean to Dilemma is people, Africans who have been educated abroad. I'm sure we have discussed this earlier also. Yes, it is Our Sister Killjoy. Our Sister Killjoy. The dilemma of a ghost also talks about being to Africans. That's why you might have got confused. But this is her first semi-autobiographical experimental novel, Our Sister Killjoy, or Reflections from a Black-Eyed Squint, 1966. Okay. Now, what is the title of the work and who wrote this? Adaptation of Macbeth into the tribal Zulu culture of the early 19th century. You're all welcome. You're all welcome. Thank you. Okay. It is our welcome, Musomi. Yes. And the title of the work is? Yes. Umabata. 1970. 70. Umabata. Correct. Now, tell me who this writer is. Her unhappy marriage is depicted in her autobiographical writings like The Second Class Citizen. Yes. The writer who talks about her own unhappy marriage in autobiographical writings like Second Class Citizen. It is our Buchi Emecheta. Buchi Emecheta. The Second Class Citizen came out in? Yes, 1974. Correct. Okay. Now, which is the sequel to Second Class, or which work's sequel is Second Class Citizen? Which work's sequel is? Yes, it is In the Ditch. In the Ditch, correct. Now, which work by her concerns the problems of women in post-colonial Nigeria? It presents the clash between traditional customs of a small Igbo village in Nigeria and the ever-changing influence on of Africa's European colonizers. This work uses the practice of bride price to literally and symbolically represents women's submission. It is the bride price, correct? Bride price. This is the love story of, who are the main characters? The love story of? Yes. Ekuna and Chike. Ekuna and Chike. In which year did The Slave Girl come out? Yes, 1977. Now, who is the Somalian novelist who acquired a degree in philosophy, literature and sociology from Punjab University, Chandigarh? Yes, Somalian novelist who got a degree from India. Nuruddin Farah. That's right, Nuruddin Farah. Okay. It is 7:45. Sorry, 6:45. Now, Setu ma'am will ask the, yeah, I'll make you the host, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. I'll just make Setu ma'am the host.
Thank you, Lisbeth. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'll give you a 2-minute break because many are requesting for the break. So I'll give you a 2-minute break and come back to the session. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I hope you guys are preparing well for the exam. Good evening. Yes. So, yes. So we will continue with our revision marathon, and I'll be continuing with Canadian literature. Okay. I'll be continuing with Canadian literature. So I hope you guys are prepared well for the revision session. Yes. Thank you. So, yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So, do you have any questions or? So shall we start the session? Are you ready? Are you guys ready? Shall we start the session? Practice, practice, practice for paper 1. Make your own quotes. That will really help you. Okay, so here goes the first question. So if you want me to slow down, please let me know in the chat box. All right. Okay. Who wrote The History of Emily Montagu? Who wrote The History of Emily Montagu? Can you remember the writer? It is an account of contemporary Quebec that can be considered as an epistolary romance. And that is the first novel. That novel is considered as the first novel written in Canada and the first novel with a Canadian setting. Can you remember the name of the writer? Francis Moore Brooke. Remember, that is written in the form of, that is an epistolary romance. Yeah. Yes. So it also features elements of a travelogue as well. So can you remember other works that are written in epistolary form? Can you remember those works that are written in epistolary form? Samuel Richardson's works, yeah. Pamela, Clarissa, Dracula is written in the form of epistolary form. Yeah. The Sorrows of Young Werther by Goethe, that's also written in the form of epistolary format. Yes, Goethe. Yeah, color purple. Yeah, it is written through the letters of Seeley and Nettie. Yes. Yes, the history of Emily Montagu. So who wrote Roughing It in the Bush or Forest Life in Canada? Who wrote Roughing It in the Bush or Forest Life in Canada, which has been written to discourage prospective immigrants. So yeah, there the writer, she explored about the climatic conditions, about the picture of immigrants, about the unpredictability of native people. So these were some of the concerns addressed by the writer in that particular work. So who wrote Roughing It in the Bush or Forest Life in Canada? Yes. Yes, right answer, Susanna Strickland Moody. Susanna Strickland Moody, she wrote Roughing It in the Bush or Forest Life in Canada. So that can be considered as a prose work. Yes. So can you remember the writer who wrote the poetry collection Journals of Susanna Moody? It is written in the form of journals. The work is, even though that's a poetry collection, there the writer adopts the voice of Susanna Moody, where she attempts to imagine and convey Moody's feelings about life in Canada. Margaret Atwood. Yes, remember Margaret Atwood, she wrote Journals of Susanna Moody. Journals of Susanna Moody. Yeah, Margaret Atwood. Remember, that is again very important. Journals of Susanna Moody, written by Margaret Atwood. Can you remember the first poetry collection by Margaret Atwood? Again, poetry collections by Margaret Atwood. Again, it's important. Can you remember the first poetry collection by Margaret Atwood? Debut poetry collection by Margaret Atwood. Double Persephone. Remember? Double Persephone. Double Persephone, that is the poetry collection. That is the first poetry collection by Margaret Atwood. You can expect chronological questions in that manner. So please, please make a list of first works by major authors. That is again very important. So remember Double Persephone, that is the first poetry collection by Margaret Atwood. Who wrote Power Politics poetry collection? Who wrote Power Politics poetry collection, where she explores gender in that particular work, where she explores women's movements? Margaret Atwood. Who wrote the essay collection Power Politics? Who wrote the non-fictional work Power Politics? Who wrote the non-fictional work? Indian writer. Who wrote The Ministry of Utmost Happiness? Then The God of Small Things. The Algebra of Infinite Justice. Arundhati Roy. Power Politics is a prose work. Remember, that is the title of her prose work as well. Yes. Who wrote Vaquesta or the Prophecy? Vaquesta or the Prophecy. That is an example of a historical romance. That is an example of the genre of historical romance in Canadian literature. John Richardson. Remember John Richardson? He wrote Vaquesta or the Prophecy, published in the year 1832. So remember, that's a 19th century work. John Richardson. John Richardson. John Richardson. And Vaquesta, that is the name of the native Canadian. Native Canadian. And yeah, who's the antagonist in the novel? That is again very important. Yes, Vaquesta or the Prophecy. And it can be compared to which another famous work? That work has often been compared to another famous work, which is part of the Leather Stocking Tales. That is the clue. Can you remember the work? Can you remember the work? And the work, it's subtitled Last of the Mohicans. The work is subtitled Narrative of 1757. So what could be the title? The Last of the Mohicans. Remember? So this work, Vaquesta or the Prophecy, it has often been compared to another historical romance, which can be considered as an example of the frontier life, which describes the frontier life in America. So Last of the Mohicans. Who wrote Last of the Mohicans? Last of the Mohicans by James Fenimore Cooper. James Fenimore Cooper wrote Last of the Mohicans, and Last of the Mohicans is part of a pentalogy. Can you remember the name of the pentalogy? It consists of 5 works. Leather Stocking series. Yes, Leather Stocking Tales. Leather Stocking Tales. Can you remember the names of those works? The Prairies, the Pioneers, then The Last of the Mohicans, The Prairies, The Pathfinder, and The Deer Slayer. These 5 works constitute Leather Stocking Tales. Remember, James Fenimore Cooper wrote Leather Stocking Tales that describes about the frontier life in America. And Wakwasta or the Prophecy by John Richardson has often been compared to the historical work Last of the Mohicans, Wakwasta or Prophecy. This is part of Canadian fiction. Is that clear? Is there any confusion? Yeah. So, who wrote Legends of Vancouver? Who wrote Legends of Vancouver? That is a short story collection by, who wrote Legends of Vancouver? The writer had also written another poetry collection titled Flint and Feather. So can you remember the writer? Pauline Johnson. Yes, you're right. Pauline Johnson, Canadian writer and performer. Remember, she was a performer and performer and Canadian writer. Popular in the 19th century. And her short story collection is titled Legends of Vancouver. And her poetry collection titled Flint and Feather. Remember, Flint and Feather, that's the title of her poetry collection. Flint and Feather. Who wrote Legends of Sleepy Hollow? Who wrote the short story Legends of Sleepy Hollow? Can you remember? Legends of Sleepy Hollow, that is a short story written by an American writer, Washington Irving. Yes, Washington Irving, he wrote the short story titled Legends of Sleepy Hollow. Who wrote the short story collection Legends of Vancouver? Who wrote the short story collection Legends of Vancouver? That is a short story collection by Pauline Johnson. Who wrote Flint and Feather poetry collection? Pauline Johnson. Who wrote the poetry collection Feather of the Dawn? Who wrote the poetry collection Feather of the Dawn, where she described about the Indian independence movement? Can you remember the writer? Who wrote The Golden Threshold? Who wrote The Golden Threshold? Who wrote Palanquin Bearers? Yes, Sarojini Naidu's poetry collection. One of her poetry collections is titled Feather of the Dawn. Feather of the Dawn, where she described about the Indian independence movement. Okay, various poems expressed about Indian independence movement. Who wrote the verse drama Clay? Who wrote the verse drama Clay? E.J. Pratt. Yes, E.J. Pratt. Can you remember the title of his long narrative poem? Rachel, A Sea Story of Newfoundland. That is the title of a long narrative poem written by E.J. Pratt. Then, he was a major poet from Newfoundland. So, that is again important. And Clay is a verse drama written by E.J. Pratt. Who wrote Ned Pratt, The Personal Legend? Ned Pratt, The Personal Legend. That's an essay written in appreciation of E.J. Pratt's works. Can you remember the name of the writer who wrote Ned Pratt, The Personal Legend? That's part of the collection Literary History of Canada. Who wrote Anatomy of Criticism? Who wrote Fearful Symmetry? Remember Northrop Frye? He was a Canadian critic. And he wrote Literary History of Canada, Yeah, a work on literary criticism, and he dedicated this particular chapter, Ned Pratt, the personal legend. In dedication, he dedicated that work, that particular chapter to E.J. Pratt. So remember, that is very important. Northrop Frye in his literary work, critical work. So who wrote Day and Night poetry collection? Who wrote Day and Night poetry collection? The writer was active in the Communist Party of Canada, and she was known for her powerful use of imagery. Can you remember the name of the writer who wrote the poetry collection Day and Night? Day and Night. Dorothy Livesey. Dorothy Livesey. Yes. Dorothy Livesey. Dorothy Livesey. Yes. Can you remember the name of the anthology which heralded the emergence of modernism in Canada? Can you remember the name of the anthology which heralded the emergence of modernism in Canada? And this particular anthology was anonymously edited by F.R. Scott. Can you remember the name of the anthology? New Provinces. Yes, New Provinces. And remember this particular work, it was anonymously edited by, this anthology was anonymously edited by F.R. Scott. F.R. Scott. Can you remember the names of anthologies produced by the Movement Group? The Movement Group, please cross-connect and study. Movement Group, 1950s group, it produced 2 anthologies describing their movement. Can you remember those anthologies produced by Movement Group? Poets of the 50s, Poets of the 1950s, edited by D.J. Enright, and New Lines edited by Robert Conquest. Yeah. Yes. New Lines edited by Robert Conquest. And here there is this anthology, New Provinces. That is an anthology which heralded the emergence of modernism in Canada. And this particular group of poets, Montreal group of poets, yeah, they're major poets. This group included major poets such as A.G.M. Smith, Leo Kennedy, F.R. Scott. Yes. So E.J. Pratt was also belonged to this movement, Montreal group of poets. So remember, like, you can expect match the following questions for that manner, because this movements again, it's very important. So many times I've asked questions based on certain literary movements. It can be in the form of match the following questions. It can be in the form of which of the following statements is not true about a particular movement. And so please make a list of those literary movements, maybe the year of formation of those movement and the members associated with certain movement. That is very important. Okay, so who wrote Two Solitudes? Who wrote Two Solitudes, which is set against the background of First World War, which is set against the First World War. It explores the cultural tensions of 2 linguistic groups in Canada, English-speaking Canadians and French-speaking Canadians, this particular work. So Two Solitudes, it describes about the isolation and cultural tensions between 2 groups. So Two Solitudes, can you remember the name of the writer? Hugh MacLennan. Yes, you're right. Hugh MacLennan wrote Two Solitudes. So who wrote Alastair, or the Spirit of Solitude? That is a lyrical poem that also describes about the themes of isolation, then about idealism, about the quest for truth. Can you remember the writer who wrote Alastair, or the Spirit of Solitude? I got reminded of this work. P.B. Shelley. Yes, P.B. Shelley. Remember, that is a poem. That is a poem. And here, Hugh MacLennan's Two Solitudes, that is a novel. Who wrote The Watch That Ends the Night, which is set against the backdrop of the Second World War, fascism, Spanish Civil War? Again, Hugh MacLennan. Yes, Hugh MacLennan. He was a professor at McGill University, and he wrote The Watch That Ends the Night, that's set against the backdrop of the Second World War, Spanish Civil War. Then Two Solitudes. Two Solitudes, it's about the linguistic groups in Canada, French-speaking Canadians and English-speaking Canadians. So who wrote 10 Green Bottles? Who wrote 10 Green Bottles? Who wrote 10 Green Bottles? The writer can be considered as a feminist writer. She wrote about feminist themes. She wrote about women's search for independence in her works. Can you remember the writer? Goodbye, Harold. Good luck. This is again another work. Audrey Thomas. Audrey Thomas wrote 10 Green Bottles. 10 Green Bottles. Again, it's a very important work by Audrey Thomas. Audrey Thomas, yeah, she's a Canadian short story writer and novelist. And she was born in the year 1935. 1935. Murder in the Cathedral was performed in which year? Performed and published in the same year. So which year? 1935. Untouchable published in which year? 1935. Swami and Friends published in which year? 1935. 1935. Yes. So remember, Audrey Thomas, she's a feminist writer. She wrote about women's search for independence, then conflicts between men and women in her works. So remember, this is one of her major works, 10 Green Bottles. 10 Green Bottles. Who wrote Songs My Mother Taught Me? Who wrote Songs My Mother Taught Me? That is again another work by Audrey Thomas. Who wrote In Search of Her Mother's Gardens? Who wrote In Search of Her Mother's Gardens? Can you remember the writer? There she explodes the theme of womanism. In Search of Her Mother's Gardens. Alice Walker. Who wrote Mother of 1084 play that is set against the backdrop of Naxalite movement in India? Mahashweta Devi. Who wrote Mahashweta Devi? Remember, that's a play written by Mahashweta Devi. Sujata, Brati, they are characters. Who wrote The Autobiography of My Mother? Who wrote The Autobiography of My Mother? The Autobiography of My Mother. Antiquan American novelist, essayist, Jamaica Kincaid. Jamaica Kincaid wrote The Autobiography of My Mother. That can be considered as a semi-autobiographical work by Jamaica Kincaid. Yes. So who wrote Songs My Mother Taught Me? So who wrote Songs My Mother Taught Me? Audrey Thomas. Yes. Audrey Thomas. Okay. Who wrote Deptford Trilogy? The setting is in Deptford. Who wrote Deptford Trilogy? Characterization is an important aspect that you find in Robertson Davies works. So Deptford Trilogy, that's a trilogy written by Robertson Davies. Can you remember those works that's part of this trilogy? Can you remember those works? That are part of this trilogy? Fifth Business. I'll give you a clue. Yes. Fifth Business, Manticore, World of Wonders. Yes. Fifth Business, Manticore, World of Wonders. You're right. Yes. Fifth Business, Manticore, World of Wonders. These three works that constitute Deptford Trilogy. Who wrote Show Business? Shashi Tharoor. Who wrote Fifth Business? That explores Young psychology, myth, folklore. The setting is in Deptford. That is why the work has been titled, the trilogy has been titled Deptford Trilogy. Yes. The Manticore, World of Wonders. Who wrote World Within World? Can you remember the writer that can be considered as a memoir written by? World Within World. Memoir written by? Stephen Spencer. Yes. Who wrote Cornish Trilogy? Who wrote Cornish Trilogy? Who wrote Cornish Trilogy? Again by Robertson Davies. Robertson Davies. The Rebel Angels, What is Bred in the Bond, The Lyre of Orpheus. These three works constitute Cornish Trilogy. Cornish Trilogy. Yes, Cornish Trilogy. Cornish Trilogy by yes, Salterton Trilogy, Cornish Trilogy, Deptford Trilogy, all these works, all these trilogies, they are written by Robertson Davies. Who wrote the play Ecstasy of Rita Jo? That's a play, that is a play in 2 acts where the writer explores about race, about the marginalization of indigenous group. Can you remember the name of the writer? George Raiga. George Raiga. George Raiga. It is about the story of Rita Jo. Rita Jo is the central character there. So that is about her life. Yes, where the writer explores the themes of marginalization, racism. Yes. Who wrote Book of Longing? Who wrote Book of Longing? There the writer explored the themes of religion, politics, isolation. He had also written another work titled The Spice Box of Earth, Flowers for Hitler. All these are works by Leonard Cohen. Yes, wrote the works Book of Mercy, Book of Longing. And remember, Book of Longing is dedicated to whom? It's dedicated to his mentor. It's dedicated to his mentor, Irving Layton. Remember Irving Layton, who was the mentor of Leonard Cohen. And this particular work, it was dedicated to Irving Layton. Who wrote the novel, The Favorite Game? Who wrote the novel, The Favorite Game? That's the first novel written by Leonard Cohen. Yes. Leonard Cohen, who was a poet, songwriter, and who wrote these 2 novels, The Favorite Game and Beautiful Losers. Beautiful Losers. Can you remember the name of the writer who wrote Obasan? Obasan can be described as a docu-fiction that blends the literary, historical, and autobiographical elements, narrative elements. Obasan by Joy Kogawa. Joy Kogawa, who is a Japanese-Canadian poet. Japanese-Canadian poet, Joy Kogawa. Joy Kogawa, who wrote Obasan. Obasan, yes, the plot involves the experience of 2 different families. And the story is told from the perspective of, can you remember the name of the character? The story is told from the perspective of Naomi Nakane. The story is told from the perspective of Naomi Nakane, who's a school teacher, in Alberta. Who wrote Green Water, Green Sky? Who wrote Green Water, Green Sky? Green Water, Green Sky. Green Water, Green Sky. Again, the writer who was a short story writer and novelist. Yeah. Mavis Leslie Gallant. Mavis Leslie Gallant wrote Green Water, Green Sky. Green Water, Green Sky. Who wrote 10 Green Bottles? Who wrote 10 Green Bottles? Audrey Thomas. Audrey Thomas. Canadian writer. Canadian feminist writer. Who wrote Anne of Green Gables? Who wrote Anne of Green Gables, which can be considered as a regional novel, local color novel? Anne of Green Gables. The work is set in Avonlea. That is the fictional setting that you find in Anne of Green Gables, Avonlea. Lucy Maud Montgomery. Lucy Maud Montgomery wrote Anne of Green Gables. That can be considered as a literary classic, can be considered as a children's novel. That is again an example of local color novel, American regional writing. So remember, the setting of the novel is very important. Avonlea. Republic of Gilead is the setting of which work? Republic of Gilead is the setting of which work? Handmaid's Tale. Handmaid's Tale. Oceania is the setting of which work? (1984). Republic of Gilead is the setting of Handmaid's Tale. Oceania is the setting of 1984. Saint Dogs is the setting of which work? Saint Dogs is the setting of which work? That's again a fictional town. Setting is in the setting of which work? Mill on the Floss. Yes, right. Mill on the Floss. Yes, you're right. Mill on the Floss. Yes. Sunshine Sketches of a Little Town. That is again another an example of local color novel that is set in the fictional town of, Stephen Leacock's works. That is set in the fictional town of. Can you remember the fictional name of the fictional town? Mariposa. Mariposa. Yes. Yes. And this particular work, it is part of Canadian humorous literature. Canadian humorous literature. Canadian humorous literature. Hagar Shipley is a character in which work? Hagar Shipley. The story is told through the perspective of Hagar Shipley. There she... Yeah. Yes. Yes. Stone Angel. Stone Angel. Stone Angel. Published in the year 1964. Who wrote the Stone Angel? Who wrote the Stone Angel? Margaret Lawrence. Margaret Lawrence. Remember, that particular work is part of which series? That particular work is part of which series? Manawaka series. Yes. Manawaka series. Manawaka series. The Stone Angel, A Jest of God, The Fire Dwellers, Bird in the House, The Diviners. These 5 works constitute Manawaka series. Who wrote Children of Violence series? Children of Violence series that also consist of 5 books that can be considered as semi-autobiographical works that is told through the perspective of Martha Quest. And Martha Quest is the title of the first book of Children of Violence series. Doris Lessing. Doris Lessing wrote Children of Violence series and Manawaka novels that also consist of 5 books written by Margaret Lawrence. Margaret Lawrence, and Hagar Shipley is the central character in The Stone Angel. The Stone Angel. Yes. Moraghan is the central character in which work? Moraghan, who is a successful novelist, and the story is told through the perspective of Moraghan. Diviners. Yes. Diviners. 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 Yes. Diviners. And which story, which work by Margaret Lawrence describes the life of a school teacher? Rachel Cameron. Rachel Cameron. Rachel Cameron. There she describes about her relationship with the mother. Jest of God. A Jest of God. There the central character's name is Rachel Cameron. Rachel Cameron. And Bird in the House, that is a collection of short stories by Margaret Lawrence, and there the central character is Vanessa McLeod. Vanessa McLeod. Okay. Marian McAlpin is the central character of which work? Marian McAlpin. Peter, Duncan, Marian McAlpin, all these are characters in which work? Can you remember the name of the work? The work can be considered as a proto-feminist work. Marian McAlpin, who works as a market analyst. The work, it's written by Margaret Atwood. So can you remember the name of the work? The work got published in the year 1969. Edible Woman. There she explored the themes of cannibalism. There it can be considered as a proto-feminist work. She herself, Margaret Atwood herself, described that work as a proto-feminist work. Yes, Edible Woman. Edible Woman. Who wrote who wrote The Man from the Creeks, that can be considered as a historical novel about the Klondike Gold Rush. The Man from the Creeks. Can you remember the writer who wrote that can be considered as a historical novel? Robert Crush. Yes, Robert Crush wrote The Man from the Creeks. The Man from the Creeks. Who wrote The Wars? Who wrote The Wars? The narrator incorporated various narratives such as letters, photographs, and here the Wars, it utilizes the first person narrative, second person narrative, and the third person narrative. The work, the central character of the work is titled Robert Ross. Timothy Finlay. Yes, Timothy Finlay wrote The Wars. The Wars, again, it's very important. The Wars by Timothy Finlay. Who wrote famous last words? There, the central character's name is Hugh Selwyn Moberly. Can you remember the name of the writer? Timothy Finlay. Timothy Finlay. Whose first short story collection is titled Dance of the Happy Shades? Whose first short story collection is titled Dance of the Happy Shades? Dance of the Happy Shades. She was the first to win the Nobel Prize for Canadian literature. First Canadian to get the Nobel Prize. Alice Munro. Yes, Alice Munro. Remember, she won the Nobel Prize for Literature in the year 2013. 2013, yes. Yes, 2013. So first collection is titled Dance of the Happy Shades. Dance of the Happy Shades. Who wrote The Progress of Love? Progress of Love. That is again a short story collection by Progress of Love by Alice Munro. Alice Munro. Yes. Alice Munro. Who wrote Peace Shall Destroy Many? She belonged to the minority ethnic group, Mennonites group. Can you remember the writer who wrote Peace Shall Destroy Many? And she had also written another epic novel, The Blue Mountains of China. Yes. She also belonged to this minority ethnic group of the Mennonites who belonged to with German ancestry. Rudy Weeb. Yes, you're right. Rudy Weeb. Yes. Rudy Weeb. Rudy Weeb wrote Peace Shall Destroy Many. That's the first novel written by Rudy Weeb. Peace Shall Destroy Many. And remember, she had also written another epic novel, The Blue Mountains of China, that describes about the lives and struggles of Mennonites group. Rudy Weeb. Yes. Who wrote The Magic Mountain? 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 Thomas Mann. Yes. Yes, Thomas Mann wrote Magic Mountain. Yes. So remember, Rudy Weeb, he had also written The Temptations of Big Bear, for which he won the Governor General's Prize. Temptations of Big Bear. Remember that particular, again, it's important because that can be considered as a historical fiction. Historical fiction, The Temptations of Big Bear. The Temptations of Big Bear. Then there is another work, A Discovery of Strangers. A Discovery of Strangers, that is again written by Rudy Weeb. Rudy Weeb. Rudy Weeb. Who wrote Burning Water? Who wrote Burning Water? There the work focuses on the life of the 18th century Canadian explorer George Vancouver. Can you remember the name of the writer who wrote Burning Water? Burning Water, the writer, the work describes about, which focuses on the life of 18th century explorer George Vancouver. Yes. George Bowering. Yes, George Bowering. Yes. Who wrote the historical metafiction Shoots? Concerning the MacLean gang, who wrote the historical metafiction Shoots? Yes, George Bowering. George Bowering. George Bowering. Who wrote Stone Diaries? That can be considered as a fictional autobiography of Daisy Goodwill Fletch is the central character. Carol Shields. Remember, Carol Shields wrote Stone Diaries. Who wrote Stone Angel? Margaret. Who wrote Stone Angel? Margaret Lawrence wrote Stone Angel. Hagar Shipley is the central character in which work? Hagar Shipley is the central character in which work? Stone Angel. And Daisy Goodwill Fletch is the central character in Stone Diaries. Stone Diaries. Stone Diaries. Marian McAlpin is a central character in which work? Marian McAlpin. Yes. Morag Gun is a central character in which work? Morag Gun. Morag Gun is a central character in Diviners. Diviners. Anne Shirley is a central character in which work? Anne Shirley. Anne Shirley. Can you remember the work? It is set in the fictional town of Avonlea that can be considered as a local color novel. Anne of Green Gables. Yes. Anne of Green Gables. Anne of Green Gables. Joanne Foster is a central character of which work? Joanne Foster. Joanne Foster. She later became the author of Gothic romances. Can you remember Margaret Atwood? She wrote this particular work that also describes about the struggles of Joanne Foster. And she finally fakes her own suicide to escape the complicated turmoil of her life. Can you remember the work? Yes, Lady Oracle. Yes, Lady Oracle. Lady Oracle. Yes. Offred, Offglen, all these are characters in which work? Offred, Offglen. Handmaid's Tale. Handmaid's Tale. Handmaid's Tale is set in. Can you remember the name of the dystopian setting, fictional dystopian setting? Republic of Gilead. Republic of Gilead. Yes. Can you remember the work where she describes about the life of a fictional painter, Elaine Risley, who reflects on her childhood? Margaret Atwood's work. Can you remember the work? Cat's Eye. Yes, Cat's Eye. Cat's Eye. Yes. Cat's Eye. Xenia is a character in which work? Xenia. There are three middle-aged women characters, Tawny, Charis, and Rox. And there is this character, Xenia. They share this common factor, all these characters. The fear of this, Xenia, the robber brides. The robber brides. Which work of Margaret Atwood describes the life of an 80-year-old woman, Iris Chase Griffin, and this particular work for which she won the Booker Prize? Can you remember the work for which she won the Booker Prize? Blind Assassin. The Blind Assassin. Blind Assassin. Yeah. Yes. Blind Assassin. Who wrote Mad Adam Trilogy? Who wrote Mad Adam Trilogy? Mad Adam Trilogy. Can you remember these three works that are part of Mad Adam Trilogy? Oryx and Crake? Yes. Then, so again, these three works, they are part of, all these three works, they are dystopian in nature. Dystopian in nature. Year of Flood and Mad Adam. And remember, Margaret Atwood, she won the Year of the Flood. Yes. Dystopian trilogy. Mad Adam trilogy. Oryx and Crake, Year of the Flood, and Mad Adam. Mad Adam. So, Margaret Atwood, she won the Booker Prize twice. Can you remember those two works for which she won the Booker Prize? For Blind Assassin and for Testaments. Yes, for Blind Assassin and for Testaments. Yes, for Blind Assassin and for Testaments. Yes. What is the subtitle of Survival? What is the subtitle of Survival? That can be considered as a criticism of a literary critical work by Margaret Atwood. Can you remember the subtitle of Survival? Subtitles are again very important. A thematic guide to Canadian literature. A thematic guide to Canadian literature. Who wrote the poetry collection The Circle Game? A thematic guide to Canadian literature. Who wrote the poetry collection Circle Game? Margaret Atwood. Remember, Double Persephone, Circle Game, The Door The Door, Morning in the Burnt House. All these are poetry collections by Margaret Atwood. Who wrote the poetry collection Door into the Dark? Who wrote the poetry collection The Door into the Dark? I can give you a clue. The writer won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1995. Yeah. Can you remember the name of the writer? Shimasini. Shimasini, Death of a Naturalist, Door into the Dark. All these are poetry collections by Shimasini. Shimasini. Who wrote the short story Gertrude Talks Back? That can be considered as a retelling of Oedipus Rex. Margaret Atwood. So minor works of major writers. Again, it's very important. So remember, Margaret Atwood, she wrote works on literary criticism. She wrote short story collections. She wrote poetry collections. So make a list of her works. That is again very important. So who wrote The English Patient? Who wrote The English Patient? That's a very easy question. Sri Lankan Canadian writer, for which he won the Booker Prize, for which he won the Golden Man Booker Prize. Yeah, Michael Ondaatje. And remember, the work is set in which place? It is set in a villa. In which place? It is set in an Italian villa in Tuscany, Italy. And it is again set against the backdrop of Second World War. Can you remember those four characters, those four major characters? What is the name of the Canadian nurse in Hannah? Yes. Can you remember the name of the Hannah? Kirpal Singh? Then what is the name of the English patient? Almasi and Caravaggio. All these are four major characters that you can find in English Patient. Yes. Who wrote Anil's Ghost? There, the central character's name is Anil Thisara, who is a forensic anthropologist who comes back to the civil war torn Sri Lanka, who comes back from her university. Yeah. By Michael Ondaatje. Remember, the name of the work is Anil's Ghost. Remember, the central character's name is Anil Thisara. Who wrote The High Mountains of Portugal? High Mountains of Portugal, that the novel is divided into 3 sections. I can give you a clue. Life of Pi. Yes. Who wrote Life of Pi? Jan Martel. So this is another major work by Jan Martel, The High Mountains of Portugal. Who wrote Beatrice and Virgil? That is, yes, Jan Martel. Yes. Can you remember the writer who wrote Half-Breed? That also describes about the struggles of First Nations people, about indigenous group. Who's a Métis writer, playwright, filmmaker. Half-Breed. That also has autobiographical elements. Maria Campbell. Yes, Maria Campbell. Who wrote The Book of Negroes? Again, the writer who's a novelist, who was born to an Ontario, to American immigrant parents. Yeah. By Lawrence Hill. Yes. So, who wrote In Search of April Raintree? Again, another Métis author. Again, this work also has autobiographical elements. Can you remember the writer? Beatrice Culton. It is about the story of 2 sisters, Cheryl and April Raintree. Who wrote Tiger's Daughter, that is the debut work. The story revolves around the life of Tara. Yes. Indo-Canadian writer. Bharati Mukherjee. Yes. Bharati Mukherjee. Bharati Mukherjee. Again, nationalities of writers. Again, it's very important. Remember Aravind Adiga, he's an Indo-Australian writer. Bharati Mukherjee, Indo-Canadian writer. Then Meena Alexander, Indo-American writer. So please make a list of the nationalities of those writers. That's also very important. So who wrote Such a Long Journey? Such a Long Journey. Such a Long Journey by Parsi Indian-Canadian writer. Rohinton Mystery. Yes, Rohinton Mystery. Rohinton Mystery. Billy Moria is a character in which work? Billy Moria is a character in which work? Billy Moria is a character in which work? Again, Gustave Noble, Billy Moria, all these are characters in which work? Work by Rohinton Mystery. Can you remember? Such a Long Journey. Yes, Such a Long Journey. Who wrote the short story collection Tales from Firozabad? Who wrote the short story collection Tales from Firozabad? Again by Rohinton Mystery. Yes, Rohinton. Deena Dalal, Ishwar, Om Prakash, all these are characters in which work? A Fine Balance. A Fine Balance. Again, the setting is in Bombay. Yes. Nariman Vakil is a character in which work? Nariman Vakil, who's an elderly Parsi widower in the early stages of Parkinson's disease. Yes, Family Matters. Again, another major work by Rohinton Mystery. Yes. So, Anakha is here. Thank you so much, everyone. So, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. So, good night, everyone. So, Anakha will continue the session. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes. So with that, we will move on to Caribbean literature. Yes. Good evening, everybody. So we will be doing Caribbean literature for some time. Yes. So NT has shifted its trends from only asking on questions from British literature to Caribbean to Australian to Canadian. Yeah, that's why we're having a lot of revisions on these topics. Okay. So shall we begin our Caribbean literature revision? Yes. All right. So we will begin. So, you know that Christopher Columbus has discovered the Bahamas, right? So can you tell me when was that discovery or in which year? It was in 1492. 1492, yes. So our Caribbean history starts during the time of 1930s and 1940s. So there were some Caribbean little magazines, so such as Beacon in the Trinidad and Public Opinion in Jamaica. So these were some of the little Caribbean magazines. So the writers, those who were associated with these magazines, they acted as cultural agitators and they were referred to as a particular name. Do you know the name? So they were referred to as a particular name by Albert Gomez. Can you tell me what they were called as? Yes, it is the angry young men of the 30s. The angry young men of the 30s. Okay, so these cultural agitators that associated with these magazines were called as the angry young men of the 30s. And they were called so by Albert Gomez. Okay. Now moving on. So we'll do a little bit of Caribbean poetry now. So can you tell me where was Kamau Brathwaite born? Or what is his nationality? Is he from Trinidad or is he a Barbadian? Kamau Brathwaite is a Yes, Brathwaite is a Barbadian. Brathwaite, Barbadian. So you can think about it like that. Yes. And he was born in which year? Kamau Brathwaite. Kamau Brathwaite was born in 1930s. Kamau Brathwaite was born in the 1930s. So he coined a particular term. Do you guys know what is that? Kamau Brathwaite coined a particular term that refers to the language of the nation. So that's the clue. Kamau Brathwaite coined this particular term. It's called the nation's language. It's called the nation language. Kamau Brathwaite coined the term nation language. Yes, very good. Okay. So, now tell me, which is that trilogy that is associated with Kamau Brathwaite? The very famous one. Which one? Like, if I tell you Kamau Brathwaite, what is that trilogy that comes to your mind? It is the Arrivants. Yes, the Arrivants, a New World trilogy in 1973. So, can you tell me which are those works that comes under this New World trilogy? The first one is the Arrivants, and the second one, yes. Yes, the trilogy consists of Rites of Passage, Masks, and Islands. Rites of Passage, Masks, and Islands. Okay, so these are the three works that comes under the New World trilogy. Okay, so there is this particular poem called Caliban. Okay, Caliban. So can you tell me in which work under this trilogy do we find that poem? Caliban. It is a poem in the New World trilogy, yes. So can you tell me which is that? It is from the Arrivants. It is a poem from the Arrivants. Okay. Caliban is a poem from the Arrivants. Okay. So, according to Kamau Brathwaite, he argued that a particular metric line is adopted and that can be the embodiment of the linguistic and the environmental characteristic of British. So he made use of a particular metric line which he saw as the embodiment of the linguistic and the environmental characteristic of the British. So can you tell me which is that? It's an easy one. It is the iambic pentameter. We are talking about iambic pentameter. Yes. Okay, so can you tell me where was Rites of Passage first published? In which magazine? Rites of Passage, we know that Rites of Passage is a trilogy under New World trilogy. And can you tell me where was it published or in which magazine do we find it first published? It was first published in November 1966. Now you have to tell me where. It was edited by Alan Ross. Yes, Rites of Passage in 1967 was first published in the London magazine. The London magazine. Rites of Passage was first published in the London magazine. Yes. So can you tell me which is that work that adopts the mask of Africa? Which is that work under this trilogy that adopts the mask of Africa? So mask and ritual are two related motifs that are used in this particular work. Yes, it's an easy one, right? It is the masks. The masks in 1968. Yes. Now, I'll tell you a few lines. You have to tell me from which work I took it from, okay? Yes. Grant God a clear release from thieves, from robbers, and from those that plot and poison while they dip into our dish. I'll repeat that again. Grant God a clear release from thieves, from robbers, and from those that plot and poison while they dip in our dish, into our dish. Yes. So it's from the trilogy, that is for sure. Yes, it's from, yes, the Rites of Passage. Rites of Passage in 1967. Yes, the poem is Didn't He Ramble? It's from Didn't He Ramble in Rites of Passage, 1967. Okay. So, so in which trilogy? I mean, not in which trilogy. So we know about the New World trilogy, right? So in which work of the New World trilogy does Brathwaite skillfully intervenes the past and present of the Caribbean homeland? So he catches the essence of the region's natural beauty and history. It's all intertwined into one in this particular work of trilogy. Yes, it is from Islands. Okay, Islands in 1967. Islands. Yes. Okay, so which is that work by again Kamau Brathwaite that won him? So you have to tell me which poem this is. So this is a 2005 poem that won him the Griffin International Poetry Prize. This poem by Kamau Brathwaite won him the 2005 Griffin International Poetry Prize. Which is the poem we are talking about? It is Slow Horses. Yes, that's right. It is Slow Horses. Slow Horses. Yes. Moving on. You guys are doing a very good job. So keep going. So can you tell me when was Derek Walcott born? He was born in the same year as Kamau Brathwaite. Yes, Kamau Brathwaite was born in 1930. We know that. So Derek Walcott was also born in the same year. Yes. Okay. So can you tell me in which year did Derek Walcott got his Nobel Prize in Literature? Derek Walcott's Nobel Prize in Literature was in which year? That's right, 1992. Derek Walcott got his Nobel Prize in Literature in 1922. Okay. Now I will be giving you a little bit of description of a particular poem. You have to tell me which poem this is, okay? So this is that poem that serves as a response to the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya. This poem that was written in 1962 was a poem that serves as a response to the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya. Yes, it's an easy one, right? We know Derek Walcott, so which is that very famous work by Derek Walcott? It is Far Cry from Africa. Very good. Far Cry from Africa. Yes. Far Cry from Africa. That is right. Okay. So we have themes of colonialism and divided identity in this poem, right? Far Cry from Africa in 1962. Okay, now you have to tell me the name of that tribe that is mentioned in, okay, which is that tribe that we are talking about in Far Cry from Africa? We know that it's the Mau Mau uprising. Yes, so can you tell me the name of the tribe? Does the tribe is Kikuyu tribe. Yes, the Kikuyu tribe. The Kikuyu tribe. Yes, K-I. The spelling is, yeah, Kikuyu. Kikuyu tribe. Okay. So, we have a poetry collection by Derek Walcott called The Castaway and Other Poems, okay? The Castaway and Other Poems in 1965. So there is this particular poem in that poetry collection that looks at the radical prejudices through Othello's tales. Yes, the poetry collection is The Castaway and Other Poems. So in that poetry collection, we have a particular poem that looks at the radical prejudices, and that is told in a narrative of Othello's tale. It is, the poem is, yes, that's right. Goats and Monkeys. Goats and Monkeys. Yes, that is the poem. Goats and Monkeys. Yes, the poetry collection is The Castaway and Other Poems. We're talking about goats and monkeys. Yes. Okay. So can you tell me this work by Derek Walcott again? That is an epic poem that reimagines the Trojan War within the context of Caribbean fishermen. It was written in 1990 and it consists of 7 books and 64 chapters. It is an epic poem that reimagines the Trojan War within the context of Caribbean fishermen. It is Omeros. Omeros, yes, that's right. Omeros. Omeros in 1990. Omeros in 1990. Yes. So, can you tell me which work by Derek Walcott was described by O'Brien as an attempt to encompass every facet of Caribbean experience. The work that was described by O'Brien as an attempt to encompass every facet of Caribbean experience. Can you tell me which work I'm talking about? The clue is the work that we discussed just now. It is? Yes, it's the same thing. Omeros. O'Brien is talking about Omeros. Yes. Okay. So, which work by Derek Walcott won him the T.S. Eliot Prize? And it dwells into the themes of love, laws, and morality. And this particular title it pays homage to a particular category that is found in the Caribbean. Yes, it is about the birthplace and upbringing of Walcott. Yes, it is white egrets. Yes, very good. White egrets. White egrets received, yes, that helped him receive the T.S. Eliot Prize. White egrets that deals with the themes of laws, mortality, love. Yes. Okay. Now tell me, we know that Derek Walcott wrote Dream on a Monkey Mountain, right? So you have to tell me if it is a play or a poem or a short story collection. What is it? Dream on a Monkey Mountain. Yeah, Dream on a Monkey Mountain. Yes, it is a play. Yes, it is a play. Yes, that was written in 1967 and it won the OB Award for the Best Foreign Play. It won the OB Award for Best Foreign Play. So it has got a brief epigraph. Dream on a Monkey Mountain has got a brief epigraph. Can you tell me who wrote the epigraph? Dream on a Monkey Mountain in 1967 has got a brief epigraph. Can you tell me who wrote the epigraph? Yes, it is. Very good. Frantz Fanon. Yeah, the epigraph is from Frantz Fanon. That's right. Okay, now you have to tell me the name of the protagonist in Dream of the Monkey Mountain. It's an easy one. The protagonist is Macaque. Yes, Macaque. The protagonist is Macaque. Okay, now tell me, when was Dream on the Monkey Mountain published? The year? Just told you just now, so you have to remember it. 19? Yes, 1967. Yes, 1967. Okay. Yes, and the play centers on Macaque's unwavering faith in this mystical entity and his ability to manifest supernatural occurrences. Yes, that is Dream on a Monkey Mountain. Okay. Now we know about what the Twilight says and overture. What the Twilight says and overture. So can you tell me, is this a play or a poetry collection or a novel or an essay? What is it? I'll repeat the work again. What the Twilight says and overture. What the Twilight says and overture. It is an essay. Yes, very good. It is an essay. What the Twilight says and overture is an essay. It's an essay by Derek Walcott. Very good. Okay. So, can you tell me which is that work by Cyril Dabydeen that won him the Guana Prize? The work by Cyril Dabydeen that won him the Guana Prize in 2007. It does? Yes. You're answering it right. Yes. Drums of My Flesh. Drums of My Flesh by Cyril Dabydeen. Drums of My Flesh. Yes, that is right. Okay, I'll tell you a list of some works. You have to tell me, is it a poem or a novel, okay? So, Distances, God's Song, Heart's Flame, The Planet Earth, Elephants Make Good Step Ladders, What are these? Distances, God's Song, Heart's Fame, This Planet Earth, Elephants Make Good Step Ladders. These are poems. Poems. It is the Guiana Prize, okay? Guiana Prize. Okay. Now you have to tell me, I'll tell you some works. You have to tell me, is this, again, poems or short stories or novels. Burbis Crossing, My Brahmin Days and Other Stories. Burbis Crossing, My Brahmin Days and Other Stories. These are short stories, yes. Yes, these are short stories by Cyril Dabydeen. Yes. Okay, now can you tell me which is that very first novel by Cyril Dabydeen? Okay, there were two novels that came out in 1989. It was published by the People Tree. It is? Yes, his first novels are Dark Swirl and The Wizard Swami. Dark Swirl and Wizard Swami. These are the very first works of Cyril Dabydeen. Dark Swirl and The Wizard Swami. Okay. Now, can you tell me the nationality of Lorna Goodison? Nationality of Lorna Goodison. She's from Jamaica. Yes, very good. Lorna Goodison is from Jamaica. Yes. Okay. So, Lorna Goodison wrote a memoir that won her the National Award for Canadian Nonfiction. Can you tell me which is that work? It is a memoir and it won her the National Award for Canadian Nonfiction. It is? Yes. It is From Harvey River, a memoir of my mother and her people. The name of the memoir is From Harvey River, a memoir of my mother and her people. It won her the National Award for Canadian Nonfiction. Yes. So we know that, yes, the poetry collections are I Am Becoming a Mother, which is very important. Do look up on that. And Tamarind Season, Traveling Mercies, Hard Seas, Controlling the Silver. Yes, these are all very important poetry collections of Lorna Goodison. So do look up on that and study a little extra from those, okay? And yes, some of the major short story collections of Lorna Goodison are Baby Mother and the King of Swords, By Love Possessed, Fool for Rose, Fool Rose is Leaving Labor, In Vain Savannah. That is also a short story collection. Okay. Now tell me who wrote Home to Harlem in 1928? Home to Harlem. Home to Harlem. Who wrote that? Home to Harlem. It's an easy one, but also very important. Claude McKay. Claude McKay wrote Home to Harlem in 1928. Yes. Okay. So, can you tell me which is that movement that Claude McKay associated with? That very famous movement that Claude McKay associated with. Yes. It is? Okay, I'll give you some works, okay? Spring in New Hampshire, Harlem Shadows. Yes. These works actually led him as a prominent figure in that particular movement. So that's my clue. Spring in New Hampshire and Harlem Shadows. Yes, it is Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance, yes. He was associated with Harlem Renaissance. Yes. So, in which novel of Claude McKay do we find a protagonist called Jake Brown? Jake Brown. Where do we find that? Jake Brown. It's from, yes, it's the first novel, the debut novel, Home to Harlem. Jake Brown is a protagonist in Home to Harlem. Yes, he deserts the US Army during the World War I and relocates himself to London. Yes. So that is Home to Harlem and the protagonist is Jake Brown. Okay. So which is that novel by again Claude McKay? Do we find we find a 21-year-old Tabitha who had spent almost 7 years overseas. The novel is Banana Bottom. Banana Bottom. Yes. Banana Bottom is the novel where we find a 21-year-old Tabitha. Okay. So can you tell me which is the autobiography of Claude McKay? The autobiography of Claude McKay. It is, yeah, the autobiography written in 1937. It is A Long Way from Home. A Long Way from Home is Claude McKay's autobiography. Okay. A Long Way from Home. Yes. Okay. So there is this particular essay collection that is a set of 11 essays on the socio-political condition of Harlem and Manhattan. Do you know the name of the essay? It's about the socio-political condition of Harlem and Manhattan. So the name of the essay would be, come on, just give it a wild guess. It's about the conditions of Harlem. So the essay is Harlem. The name of the essay is Harlem. Harlem Negro Metropolis. That is the name of the essay. It's a collection of essays. Harlem Negro Metropolis. Yes. So can you tell me which is the debut short story collection by him? A debut short story collection by Jean Rice. I'm sorry. A debut short story collection of Jean Rice. Yeah. Think about something to the left. It is Left Bank. Yes, it is the Left Bank in Other Stories. Left Bank and Other Stories. So this debut short story collection by Jean Rice. So the introduction was given by another very famous person. Do you know who that is? This debut work has this debut short story collections. Introduction was given by a particular person. It is? Yes. The introduction was by Ford Madox Ford. Okay. The introduction was by Ford Madox Ford. So this short story collection called The Left Bank and Other Stories had an original title. Any idea what that is? This debut work, which is the short story collection, has got an original title. I mean, originally the collection was subtitled as, it's not titled, it's a subtitle. Sketches? Yes. Go on, you'll get it. Sketches and Studies of the Present Day Bohemian Paris. The subtitle is, originally the collection was subtitled as Sketches and Studies of Present Day Bohemian Paris by Jean Rice. Yes. So in which work by Jean Rice do we find the protagonist as Maria Zelli? Maria Zelli. Maria Zelli. Maria Zelli is from? It is Quartet. Maria Zelli is the main character of the story Quartet in 1928. Quartet. Okay. So in which novel do we find a protagonist called Anna? She's a young chorus girl who is raised in the West Indies and she feels disconnected in England. The novel about the protagonist Anna. She is a young chorus girl who was raised in the West Indies and she feels disconnected when she moved to England. It is Yes, very good. Voyage in the Dark. Voyage in the Dark. Yes. Voyage in the Dark. Okay. So do look up Good Morning Midnight, After Living Mackenzie. The protagonist is Julia Martin. Okay. Now tell me, which is the very famous work by Jane Rice? It is a post-colonial and a feminist prequel to Jane Eyre. You should know this for sure. This work by Jane Rice is a post-colonial and a feminist prequel to Jane Eyre. It is? Yes. White Sargasso Sea. White Sargasso Sea. Yes. And the year is 1966. That is the magnum opus of Jane Rice. So that is magnum opus means the very important work. 1966. That's right. Okay. So can you tell me the name of the protagonist in White Sargasso Sea? The protagonist in White Sargasso Sea? Yes. Antionette. Antionette Mason. She's an heiress of the Creole descent. Antionette Mason. White Sargasso Sea in 1966. Okay. Now, can you tell me who wrote Une Tempest? Une Tempest. She's a Caribbean. Une Tempest. Yes. Aimé Césaire. Aimé Césaire wrote Une Tempest. Yes. Aimé Césaire wrote Une Tempest. So, can you tell me this essay by Aimé Césaire that contents on the colonialism and says that the European colonial power has led to two major issues, that is the problem of the proletariat and the colonial problem. There is an essay in 1950. The essay is, it's about, yes, Discourse on Colonialism is the essay, okay? Discourse on Colonialism. So Césaire argues the establishment of colonies and the subsequent exploitation by the European colonial powers. That is, the essay is Discourse on Colonialism in 1950. Okay. So, in which work do we find this character Ariel, that is a mulatto slave, as a mulatto slave? Ariel as a mulatto slave. That is in the one I asked you just a minute back. Une Tempest. Yes. It's from Une Tempest. Yes. So Ariel is portrayed as a mulatto slave instead of a spirit. And Caliban, and who is Caliban? Caliban is a black slave. Yes. Caliban becomes the black slave. Okay. Now moving on. So this poetry collection by Aimé Césaire has got its so that poetry collection has illustrations by Pablo Picasso. This poetry collection by Aimé Césaire has got illustrations by Pablo Picasso. Do you know the name of the poetry collection? Illustrations of Pablo Picasso. The poetry collection is Lost Body in 1986. Okay. Lost Body. Lost Body in 1986. Okay. So can you tell me which is that autobiographical work of E.R. Brathwaite? The autobiographical novel of E.R. Brathwaite. The autobiographical work of E.R. Brathwaite. Yes, it is To Sir with Love. To Sir with Love. Yes, that was published in 1959. To Sir with Love. Okay, so can you tell me the name of the protagonist in To Sir with Love? Who was an engineer in the British Guiana, moved to Britain before the World War II. The protagonist is? Yes. Ricky Brathwaite. The name of the protagonist is Ricky Brathwaite. So E.R. Brathwaite's protagonist is Ricky Brathwaite. Yes. Okay. Now moving on. Can you tell me who wrote Palace of the Peacock? Who wrote Palace of the Peacock? Palace of the Peacock. That's right. Wilson Harris. Palace of the Peacock was written by Wilson Harris. It's a very important work. So do make note of it, okay? Okay, now tell me who wrote the Quartet, which is a series of 4 novels. The Guiana Quartet. Wilson Harris, yes. So can you tell me which are those works that comes under the Guiana Quartet? I'll start. Palace of Peacock, that's the first one. Okay. Palace of Peacock in 1960. Yes, the next work is? Yes, The Far Journey of Udine, 1961. So Palace of Peacock in 1960. The Far Journey of Udine in 1961. And the third one is Whole Armor in 1962. The Whole Armor in 1962. And The Secret Ladder in 1963. Okay. So I'll repeat that again. Palace of Peacock in 1960. The Far Journey of Udine in 1961. The Whole Armor in 1962. And The Secret Ladder in 1963. These are the 4 works in the Guiana Quartet. Okay. So can you tell me which is that novel by Sam Selvin that narrates the story of Tiger as he transitions into adulthood in Trinidad? A novel. So Sam Selvin is a Trinidadian author, and this novel in 1952 narrates the journey of Tiger as he transitions into adulthood in Trinidad. The novel is A Brighter Sun. A Brighter Sun. A Brighter Sun. Yes. Okay. Now moving on. So can you tell me, yes, we know that he wrote the Moses trilogy, right? So can you tell me which is the first part of the Moses trilogy? The first part of Moses trilogy. First part of Moses trilogy is Lonely Londoners. Yes, The Lonely Londoners in 1956. Lonely Londoners. Okay. So can you tell me which is the sequel to Lonely Londoners? The sequel to Lonely Londoners is Moses Ascending. So it's the Moses trilogy. Yes. So Lonely Londoners, Moses Ascending. Yes. So which is the third one? Moses Ascending and Moses Migrating. Okay. Lonely Londoners, Moses Ascending and Moses Migrating. Yes. So these are the 3 works. Okay. So can you tell me which is the debut novel of George Lamming in 1953? In 1953 by George Lamming. It's a very important work. In the Castle of My Skin. Yes, In the Castle of My Skin in 1953. In the Castle of My Skin. Okay. So I'll tell you a list of some works. You have to tell me whether it is a novel or a short story, poetry collection. Okay. The Emigrants, Season of Adventure, Water with Berries, Natives of My Person. Is it a poetry collection or is it a list of some important novels? These are, yes, novels. Novels. Yes. Okay. Yes. So can you tell me from where is the title for In the Castle of My Skin taken from? It's a work by, it is from, the title is taken from a couplet of Derek Walcott. You have to tell me the work. It's a couplet. It's from a couplet in Derek Walcott's one of his early works. The work is Epitaph for the Young, 12 cantos. Okay. Epitaph for the Young, 12 cantos. Yes. And the couplet is You in the castle of your skin. Yes, I the swineherd. You in the castle of your skin, I the swineherd. Yes, so that is George Lamming. Okay, so do look up Lamming's second novel called The Immigrants, and Of Age and Innocence, Season of Adventure, Water with Berries. These are all very important novels. Okay. Yes. So with that, we have come to the end of Caribbean literature, and we'll be moving on with some Australian. Rushdi ma'am has already joined. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I saw a lot of you answering a lot of questions. Very good with that. I'm sorry I can't give you a break because it's a marathon. And we have Ma'am's YouTube babies also with us. Hello to everyone. I hope you know me. I am Dr. Roshati Dasgupta from Vallath. And I'll be good evening, everyone. Good evening, Pugarandi. Good evening, Dina. Good evening, Chandana. Good evening to Ma'am's YouTube babies also. We have to continue the class because it's a marathon we are doing. I know you have been sitting here since 6. Good evening, Monidipa. Good evening, Akhila. Yes, so my Zoomers, I do this every day. I have to wish them individually also good evening. So this good evening period you can consider as a break. Good evening, G. Good evening, Sudeepa. Good evening, Rupam, Nidhi, Anushka, Kalpana. Good evening. I wished you good evening, Nidhi. Don't worry. Okay, shall we begin with good evening, Aishwarya? So, shall we begin with some Australian literature? And yes, don't be stressed. The exams are approaching and you all are very much prepared. I was really impressed to see your answers while Anagha was taking. I had a session till 8. I just joined after that, after completing that 5 minutes back. So, let's get started with some Australian literature now. So, when did the first fleet, the first settlers of Australia, they landed in Australia? When did they land? Do you remember? When did the first fleet land in Australia? The first settlers. Good evening, Sushanta. The first fleet landed in Australia in which year? And I'm not talking about James Cook discovering Australia. I'm talking about when did the first fleet land in Australia? In 1788. Very good. 1788. Good evening, Mitu. 1788, the first fleet landed in Australia. So, did the literature, the earlier literature depicted settlers and their battle with the natural environment? True or false? The earlier literature depicted settlers and their battles with the natural environment? Yes, it did. True. Very true. Now, coming to the authors, who wrote Waltzing Matilda? Who wrote Waltzing Matilda? Banjo. A.B. Patterson. A.B. Banjo Patterson. Yes, correct. A.B. Patterson, the name of banjo. So A.B. Banjo, but Patterson wrote. So when was the bulletin founded? When was the bulletin founded? The bulletin was founded in 1880. Yes, correct. The bulletin was founded in 1880. Was J.F. Archibald an editor of the bulletin? J.F. Archibald, was he an editor of the bulletin? Yes, true. Yes, he was. And who wrote the collection While the Billy Boils? Who wrote the collection While the Billy Boils? The collection of short stories. Who wrote it? While the Billy Boils? Henry Lawson. Very good. Henry Lawson. Was he the father of Australian prose? Was Henry Lawson regarded as the father of Australian prose on bush life? Father of Australian prose on bush life, was he? Yes, he was regarded as the father of Australian prose on bush life, Henry Lawson. Now, who was considered the father of the Australian novel? Who was considered as the father of Australian novel? Joseph Purfey. Joseph Purfey. Joseph Purfey was considered as the father of Australian novel. And now, can you tell me who wrote Bush Studies in 1902? Who wrote Bush Studies in 1902, 1902? Bush Studies in 1902. It was by Barbara Bainton. It was by Barbara Bainton. Okay, remember this, Barbara Bainton. Who was this author from Fiji who co-founded the Communist Party of Australia? The writer from Fiji who co-founded the Communist Party of Australia. Author from Fiji who co-founded the Communist Party of Australia, Catherine Susanna Pritchard. Yes, the YouTubers are also answering. Catherine Susanna Pritchard. Which is the work that Catherine Susanna Pritchard wrote, which depicts the plight of timber workers in the Kari country of Southwest Australia? Which work of Catherine Susanna Pritchard talks about the plight of timber workers in the Kari country of Southwest Australia? Yes, it is Working Bullocks. Working Bullocks. Can you give me the date when it was published? The year of publication of Working Bullocks? Year of publication of Working Bullocks? When was that published? It was published in 1926. Published in 1926. Okay. Now, see, in previous net, Aboriginal writers were very important. A question, I think 2-3 questions were from Australian Aboriginal writers. So who is this Aboriginal writer who wrote, who was part of the Black Theatre movement? Who was part of the Black Theatre movement and wrote this collection of poetry called The Firstborn and Other Poems. The Firstborn and Other Poems. Who wrote it? Which Aboriginal writer wrote The Firstborn and Other Poems? Jack Davis. Very good. And when was the Firstborn and Other Poems published? When was the Firstborn and Other Poems published? 1970. 1970. Which was the first play he produced in 1978? Jack Davis's first play, which was produced in 1978. What was the name of the first play produced in 1978? Kulark. Yes, very good. Kulark or Home, which translates to home. That was produced in 1978. 1978. Which is his most celebrated play that is set during the Great Depression? Which is his most celebrated play set during the Great Depression, and it exposes racism also? Yes, it is No Sugar. It is No Sugar. Now, who wrote My Place, which is an autobiography with elements of detective story? Who wrote My Place, which is an autobiography and has elements of detective story? Yes, it is Sally Morgan. It is Sally Morgan, My Place. And what is the year of publication of My Place? What is the year of publication of My Place? 1978. Very good. 1978. And what is the biography of her grandfather that she wrote? The biography of her grandfather that she wrote? Yes, it is a complicated title called Vanamuruganya. Vanamuruganya. That is the biography of her grandfather that she wrote. Now, who wrote Follow the Rabbit Proof Fence? Who wrote Follow the Rabbit Proof Fence? Follow the Rabbit Proof Fence. Who wrote it? It is by Doris Pilkington Garimara. Doris Pilkington Garimara. Doris Pilkington Garimara. Do you know the year of publication of 1990? Follow the Rabbit Proof Fence? It is 1996. 1996. 1996, she wrote Follow the Rabbit Proof Fence. Can you tell me when was The Dreamers published, which is by Jack Davis? The Dreamers by Jack Davis, when was that published? The Dreamers by Jack Davis, when was that published? The Dreamers was published in 1982. In 1982. Now, who wrote Wildcat Falling? Who wrote Wildcat Falling? He is also a very important Aboriginal writer. Who wrote Wildcat Falling? Mudruru. Very good. Yes. Mudruru wrote Wildcat Falling in the year 1965. 1965. And yes, he is also Colin Johnson. His Aboriginal name is Mudruru, an Australian novelist of Aboriginal descent. Yes. He has written 2 other works which has the term wildcat in it. Can you name them? 2 other novels which he wrote has the term wildcat in it. Can you name them? Yes, it is Doin or Doin Wildcat and Wildcat Screaming. Doin Wildcat and Wildcat Screaming. Can you tell me the year of publication of Doin Wildcat? Can you give me the year of publication of Doin Wildcat? 1988. And what about Wildcat Screaming? Wildcat Screaming in 1992. Wildcat Screaming in 1992. Very good. Now he has this very long titled historical novel. A very long titled historical novel. I'll give you the title, but you have to give me the year of publication. When was it first published? So that title is Dr. Wu Reddy's Prescription for Enduring the End of the World. Dr. Wu Reddy's Prescription for Enduring the End of the World. This is a long titled historical novel by Mudruru. Can you tell me when was that published? That was first published in 1983. First published in 1983. Which is the best known novel of Christina Stead, which has autobiographical elements? The best known novel which has autobiographical elements by Christina Stead. Christina Stead wrote this autobiographical elements, which is considered to be her major novel, the best known novel, that is The Man Who Loved Children, published in 1940. The Man Who Loved Children, published in 1940. Now, who wrote only one play he wrote? He has written many poems, but he wrote only one play called Ladies from the Sea. Who wrote that? Ladies from the Sea. Ladies from the Sea. A.D. Hope. Can you give me the year of publication of Ladies from the Sea? A.D. Hope's Ladies from the Sea, when was that published? 1987. 1987. Now, can you tell me his first collection of poems? Can you tell me his first collection of poems? What is his first collection of poems, poetry collection? Yes, it is The Wandering Islands. It is The Wandering Islands, which appeared in 1955. It appeared in 1955. Now, who wrote Such Is Life, which is an experimental comic novel? Who wrote Such Is Life, which is an experimental comic novel? Such Is Life. That is like a classic. It is by Joseph Murphy. Can you give me the year of publication? The experimental comic novel Such Is Life is by Joseph Murphy, published in 1903. 1903. Now, in Australia, there is this famous award called Miles Franklin. Miles Franklin Award. So, can you name the novel which Miles Franklin wrote, which is about the life of a teenage girl, and it has Australian setting, characters, and was published in 1901. Miles Franklin, she wrote this novel, which I want you to tell me, in 1901, which is about the life of a teenage girl. Yes, it is My Brilliant Career. My Brilliant Career is by Miles Franklin, and Miles Franklin Award is actually very important when it comes to Australian literature. Now, can you tell me who is this English-born Australian writer who has a homosexual orientation and was the first Australian to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature? Who won the first Nobel Prize in Australia, like first Australian to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature? Yes, it is Patrick White. Can you tell me in which year did he win the Nobel Prize? In which year did Patrick White win the Nobel Prize? 1973. Yes, 1973 is the year when he won the Nobel Prize in Literature. What was his first published novel? What was his first published novel? Happy Valley. Yes, his first published novel was called Happy Valley, published in 1939. It was dedicated to a friend. Can you tell me the name of this painter friend who it was dedicated to? Happy Valley was dedicated to his painter friend. Who was that? Roy de Maistre. Yes, Roy de Maistre. And it was dedicated to Roy de Maistre, who is a painter friend of Patrick White. Which is the comic account of the travels of a spinster whose name is Theodora Godman, caught between the two cultures of Britain and Australia? Which work of Patrick White is a comic account of travels of a spinster, Theodora Goodman, who is caught between the two cultures of Britain and Australia? The Aunt Story. Very good. The Aunt Story. Yes. And which is his unfinished novel that was published posthumously in 2012? Which is the unfinished novel by White, which was published posthumously in 2012? The Hanging Garden. Very good. The Hanging Garden. So did Patrick White refuse to accept Nobel Prize personally? Did Patrick White refuse to accept Nobel Prize personally? Yes, he did. That is true. That is true. So, which Australian poet and environmentalist wrote The Moving Image, the poetry collection called The Moving Image? Which Australian poet and environmentalist wrote the poetry collection called The Moving Image? Judith Wright. Judith Wright. Very good. Now, who wrote the novel, which is a post-war novel called No Highway? Who wrote the post-war novel called No Highway? No Highway. Neville Shute. Yes, Neville Shute is the one who wrote No Highway. Now, who wrote Lazarus, which is part of his Vatican trilogy? Who wrote Lazarus, which is part of his Vatican trilogy? Morris West. Morris West. Morris West. Yes, Morris West. Who is the author of No Glass Houses? Who is the author of No Glass Houses, which was published in 1955? It is a poet. Yes, it is Chris Wallace Crabbe. It's a collection called No Glass Houses, which he published in 1955. Chris Wallace Crabbe. Chris Wallace Crabbe. Who is the writer whose first novel was a semi-autobiographical tale of a young man growing up in wartime Brisbane during the Second World War? Whose first novel is a semi-autobiographical tale of a young man growing up in wartime Brisbane during the Second World War. David Malouf, and the work is called Jono. Jono is his first novel, published in 1975, and the two central characters are Jono and who? The two central characters of Jono are Jono and who? Yes, it is Dante. It is Dante. Which is the work by David Malouf, which has won the Commonwealth Writers' Prize in 1994? And it was also shortlisted for Booker. Which work of David Malouf was won the Commonwealth Writers' Prize in 1994, and it was also shortlisted for Booker? It is Remembering Babylon. Remembering Babylon. When was Remembering Babylon published? It has won the Commonwealth Writers' Prize in 1994, but it was published in 1993. In 1993. And which is the novel by Malouf which was inspired partly by Homer's Iliad? Which is the novel by Malouf which was partly inspired by a part of Homer's Iliad? Ransom. Yes, Ransom, published in the year 2009. Published in the year 2009. Who is called Australia's bush bard? Who is called Australia's bush bard? Les Murray. Yes, Les Murray. Is Wilderness a poem by Les Murray? The Wilderness, is it by Les Murray? Did Les Murray write The Wilderness? Yes, yes, he did write The Wilderness. Now, who gained worldwide attention with his novel Schindler's Ark? Who gained worldwide attention with his novel Schindler's Ark? Thomas Kennelly. Yes, Thomas Kennelly. Thomas Kennelly. And when was Schindler's Ark published? When was Schindler's Ark published? 1982. 1982. And which is the award-winning film that was inspired by Schindler's Ark? The award-winning film which was inspired by Schindler's Ark is called Schindler's List. Spielberg's Schindler's List. When did Thomas Kennelly write Asmara, a novel of Africa? What Towards Asmara, a novel of Africa? When was Towards Asmara, a novel of Africa published? 1989. 1989, he wrote Towards Asmara, a novel of Africa. Towards Asmara, a novel of Africa that depicts the struggle of EPLT to overcome the Ethiopian domination. And it was narrated by an Australian journalist, remember? Now, who wrote The Removalist? Who wrote The Removalist? The Removalist was written by David Williamson. The Removalist was written by David Williamson. And can you tell me the year of publication of The Removalists? The year of publication of The Removalists? 1971. Very good. Yes, 1971. Who is the author of Bliss, which is his debut novel? Who is the author of Bliss, which is his debut novel? Peter Carey. Yes, Peter Carey wrote Bliss in the year 1981. That is his debut novel. Which work of Peter Carey has won the Booker Prize and it was also made into a movie? Which work of Peter Carey has won the Booker Prize and it was also made into a movie? Oscar and Lucinda. Yes, Oscar and Lucinda. Good. Now, which is his work which is based on a literary hoax? Which is his work which is based on a literary hoax? My Life as a Fake. My Life as a Fake, published in 2003. Published in 2003. Who wrote this experimental comic best-selling science fiction called Honk If You Are Jesus? A best-selling experimental comic science fiction, which is called Honk If You Are Jesus. Who wrote it? Peter Goldsworthy. Yes, Peter Goldsworthy. Peter Goldsworthy wrote Honk If You Were Jesus. Who is best known for his novel Cloud Street? Who is best known for his novel Cloud Street, which was published in 1991? Tim Winton. Yes, Tim Winton. Who has won, which Australian author has won the Man Booker Prize in 2014? Which Australian author has won the Man Booker Prize in 2014? Richard Flanagan. Can you tell me the work? Can you tell me the work for which he has won the Man Booker Prize in 2014? Yes, it is The Narrow Road to the Deep North. The Narrow Road to the Deep North. James Coetzee, have you discussed him while discussing Canadian literature? Sorry, African literature? Yes, so then Coetzee, I'm not asking anymore. I will ask you from some of the literatures of New Zealand. Okay, while studying Australian also we have done New Zealand. So we'll cover a bit of New Zealand. Coetzee, I'm not asking anymore. So who is this short story writer, very famous short story writer from New Zealand, who wrote How Pearl Button Was Kidnapped? Who wrote How Pearl Button Was Kidnapped? Yes, Catherine Mansfield. Yes, Catherine Mansfield. Can you tell me the short story she wrote that is her final statement of war, the futility of war, courage, and her last of her many attempts to depict her father? The short story that she wrote that is her final statement on war, futility, and courage, and the last of her many attempts to depict her father is The Fly. Yes, it is The Fly. Very good. Now, who wrote the novel Roads from Home? Who wrote the novel Roads from Home? Roads from Home, which was published in 1949. It is Dan Davin. Dan Davin wrote Roads from Home, which was published in 1949. Who is, you have to tell me the real name of this author, who is better known by her pen name called Janet Frame. Can you tell me the real name of Janet Frame? Real name of Janet Frame? It's Nene Janet Patterson Clutha. Nene Janet Patterson Clutha. What is her last novel, which was published in 1988, and it was awarded that year's Commonwealth Prize also? What is Janet Frame's last novel, published in 1988, and that was awarded that year's Commonwealth Prize also? Yes, it is The Carpathians. The Carpathians. Now, who wrote the first novel? Whose first novel was The Big Season? Whose debut novel was The Big Season? Maurice Guy. Maurice Guy. Yes, Maurice Guy. Who is the Maori writer who is seen as this foundational figure in the development of Maori fiction? And she wrote this major collection of stories in English called Wairiki and Other Short Stories in 1975. Wairiki and Other Short Stories, 1975. Who wrote it? Patricia Grace. Yes. And that is like the first Maori woman to publish a collection of short stories in English. She's the first Maori woman to publish a collection of short stories in English. Did she write the novel Potiki? Did she write the novel Potiki? True or false? Yes, she wrote this novel called Potiki, which talks about Maori respect and feeling for the environment. Yes. Roger Hall wrote Middle-Age Spread. True or false? Roger Hall wrote Middle-Age Spread. True or false? Yes, he wrote Middle-Age Spread, which is a play. Who is the aromantic, asexual, atheist writer of partly Maori descent, chiefly known for her one and only novel, The Bone People? Who wrote The Bone People? Carrie Humes. Carrie Humes wrote The Bone People. Yes. When did The Bone People receive the Booker Prize? Did The Bone People win the Booker Prize? Yes, it did. In the year 1985. The Booker Prize of the year 1985 was given to The Bone People by Carrie Humes. Who wrote Chuwu? Which author of New Zealand wrote Chuwu? Chuwu. Who has written Chuwu? It's a novel published in 1998. Lloyd Jones. Yes. Lloyd Jones wrote Juwu, and which is the semi-fictional work based on the true story of New Zealand All Blacks 1905 rugby tour by Lloyd James. The semi-fictional novel based on the true story of the New Zealand All Blacks 1905 rugby tour by Lloyd James. What is the name of the book? The Book of Fame. The Book of Fame, published in 2000. Now, who is the youngest author to win the Man Booker Prize? Who is the youngest author to win the Man Booker Prize? The youngest author to win the Man Booker Prize? Eleanor Catton. Yes, Eleanor Catton. Can you name the work for which, the novel for which she has won the Man Booker Prize? The novel of Eleanor Catton, which has won the Man Booker Prize, it is The Luminaries. And it is also the longest book with 832 pages. Can you tell me the debut novel of Eleanor Catton? The debut novel of Eleanor Catton? It is The Rehearsal. The Rehearsal was the debut novel of Eleanor Catton. Now, who wrote Cliffs of Fall? Who wrote Cliffs of Fall while he was serving the British infantry? He wrote it while serving the British infantry. Cliffs of Fall. Do you know who wrote it? It is Dan Devon. Dan Devon wrote Cliffs of Fall in 1945 while he was serving the British infantry, and he started writing it as a diary. Now I'll make a statement. You have to tell me if it is true or false. The Canary is a simple short story by Catherine Mansfield about an old woman who makes her living from cooking meals for 3 young men. True or false? The Canary is a short story by Catherine Mansfield, which is a simple story about an older woman who makes her living from cooking meals for 3 young men. It is true. Yes, it is true. Who is the protagonist of Carpathians? Do you know who is the protagonist of the Carpathians? Googly question. It is Martina Brecon. It is Martina Brecon is the protagonist of the Carpathians. Now, I had asked you a few minutes back who wrote Carpathians. Do you remember who wrote Carpathians? Janet Frame. Janet Frame or Nene Janet Patterson Clutha. Nene Janet Patterson Clutha. Who wrote the Plum trilogy? Who wrote the Plum trilogy? Who wrote the Plum trilogy? Maurice Guy. Maurice Guy wrote the Plum trilogy. And can you tell me the works which is comprised in the Plum trilogy? The 3 works in the Plum trilogy are Plum, then you have Meg, and then you have Soul Survivor. Plum, Meg, and Soul Survivor. These are the 3 works that consist of the Plum trilogy. Who wrote the novel Cousins, which is a complex narrative, examines the vastly different experiences of 3 female Maori cousins brought up in different ways? Who wrote it? Patricia Grace. Patricia Grace. Now, can you tell me the 3 characters that features in The Bone People? The first one is a painter based on the author herself. Carrie Humes is the author of The Bone People. The first character is based on herself. Can you name that character? in the Bone People. It is basically, Bone People has three major characters. The first one is based on the author herself, who is a recluse painter. Can you tell me the name of the character? Kerwin Holmes, yes. Eerie Holmes becomes Kerwin Holmes. Can you tell me the name of the young mute boy who is washed ashore after a shipwreck? The name of the young boy? Simon. Yes, Simon. Simon is the second important character. And who is the Maori factory owner? Who is the third important character in the Bone People? Joe Gillelly. Yes, Joe Gillelly. These are the three major characters of the Bone People. Can you tell me the work by Lloyd James, which the protagonist is named after a character from Charles Dickens's Great Expectations? Mr. Peep. Yes, Mr. Peep. Now, which is the novel by Lloyd James, which is about a young man's growing up in a small New Zealand community and then distinguishing itself from the tradition by its skillful reportage and fast-paced narrative. So the narration, it has skillful reportage and fast-paced narrative. It's about a young man growing up in a small town in New Zealand, in the small New Zealand community, and the narrative is important. It has deviated itself from the tradition by incorporating skillful reportage and a fast-paced narrative. Yes, it is Gilmore's Diary. Gilmore's Diary by Lloyd James, published in 1985. 1985. Now, I'll ask, this is last 5 minutes, so I'll ask from both New Zealand and Australia, turn by turn. So, who wrote Parrot and Olivier in America, which was shortlisted for Commonwealth Prize also, Man Booker Prize also? Parrot and Olivier in America. Who wrote it? Parrot and Olivier in America. It is by Peter Carey. It is by Peter Carey. Now, I'll give you a statement. You have to tell me if it is correct or not. Peter Carey has won Miles Franklin Awards 5 times. True or false? Peter Carey has won Miles Franklin Awards 5 times. True or false? No, it is false. He won it 3 times. He has won it 3 times. And he is one of the 3 writers to have won the Booker Prize twice. Who are the other 2 writers who have won the Booker Prize twice? Which I did not mention, I did not discuss because you have discussed him with Canadian literature today already. That is James Coetzee and Hilary Mantel. James Coetzee and Hilary Mantel. And he has written this work called Jack Mags. Which novel is it based on? Peter Carey has written this work called Jack Mags. Which novel is it based on? Charles Dickens's Great Expectations. Yes, Charles Dickens's Great Expectation. So which novel by Peter Carey has won the 2001 Booker Prize and Commonwealth Prize? Which work by Peter Carey has won both the 2001 Booker Prize and Commonwealth Prize? True History of the Kelly Gang. Yes, the True History of the Kelly Gang. It has won both the Booker Prize and the Commonwealth Prize in the year 2001, and it was published in 2000. It was published in 2000. Can you tell me, Kelly, the titular Kelly, the full name of the person, what is the full name of the person who is this famous bushranger and outlaw? And Ned Kelly. Yes, it is based on his long letter he wrote to his daughter in San Francisco. Now, who wrote Eyrie, 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 which was published in 2013? Who wrote Eyrie or Irie, which was published in 2013? Eyrie. Tim Winton. Tim Winton. Yes, Tim Winton. Who wrote Glide Time, which is a play? Who wrote Glide Time, which is a play that depicts the frustrations and petty trumps of plays of a group called public servants, that are government officials working in government office? Who wrote this play called Glide Time, published in the year 1976? It is Roger Hall. Roger Hall. And he has written 2 plays for all female casts. Can you name them? Roger Hall has also written 2 plays which is for all female casts. Can you name them? Okay, I'll name one. You have to tell me the other one. One is Social Climbers. One is Social Climbers. Can you tell me the other one? Social Climbers and By Degrees. Social Climbers in the year 1995 and By Degrees in 1993. These are the 2 works by Roger Hall. Who wrote Here at the End of the World We Learn to Dance? Nice title, right? Here at the End of the World We Learn to Dance. Who wrote it? And it was published in the year 2002. Here at the End of the World We Learn to Dance. It's a novel by Lloyd Jones. It's a novel by Lloyd Jones. It's 9 already. Has Ankita joined? Yeah. Yes, she's here. Now we'll move on to Ankita. Oh, yeah, why can't I make you the host? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Hi. So I hope all of you have been enjoying the marathon revision session so far, right? So we have already covered the sections of most of the sections of post-colonial literature. So now we are left with only 2 sections. That is Latin American and Asian literatures. Good evening, everyone. Hi. Okay. So I will start by sharing my screen first. And I hope you guys will see it clearly. Okay. Right. Okay. So I welcome you all again to this little chunk of this massive marathon revision session. So as I told you, I will be dealing with questions from Latin American and Asian literatures. Clear? Let's look at the first question for tonight. Here is the first question. The Murder of Aziz Khan is a novel by which novelist? Is it by Sadat Hasan Manto, or is it by Zulfikar Ghosh, Bapsi Sidhwa, who has passed away today, very unfortunately, or is it by none of the above? Obviously, one of them wrote this novel. Yes, it's by. He's a Pakistani American novelist famous for his novels of magical realism. It is by Zulfikar Ghosh. Zulfikar Ghosh wrote this novel, The Murder of Aziz Khan, and he's famous for his novels which belong to the genre of magical realism. Let me tell you all a few other works by this writer so that you stay acquainted with the titles at least. He also wrote A Memory of Asia. Then he has also written a poetry collection called Selected Poems. Then The Triple Mirror of the Self, A New History of Torments, and obviously here, as we see, The Murder of Aziz Khan. These are some of the very important works by the Pakistani American novelist Zulfikar Ghosh, who very famously wrote in the genre of magical realism. Got it? So don't forget Zulfikar Ghosh. He was born in 1935 and he passed away in 2022. So he passed away quite recently, right? So do look up Zulfikar Ghosh, and obviously Manto and Sidhwa are also important, specifically when we look at partition literature. I'm sure all of you have already read partition literature. Do look up their works in partition literature, their short stories, novels, okay? Manto, Bapsi Sidhwa, Ismat Chugtai, all of them are very important. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Shadows of the Pomegranate Tree is a historical novel by British Pakistani writer Tariq Ali. First published in 1992. Is it true or false? You might be feeling bored with fill in the blanks and all that. So let's do true and false. Tariq Ali, quite a popular name, right? So did he write this novel, Shadows of the Pomegranate Tree? And it's a historical novel published in 1992. Is it true? Yes, indeed. Tariq Ali wrote Shadows of the Pomegranate Tree. Okay, so Tariq Ali is a Pakistani British political activist, writer, journalist, historian, filmmaker, and public intellectual. Okay, so what are the other works by Tariq Ali other than Shadows of the Pomegranate Tree? He also wrote Winston Churchill. He wrote the Book of Saladin, A Sultan in Palermo, The Stone Woman, The Clash of Fundamentalism. These are some of the other works by Tariq Ali. Okay, please do look up his major titles. At least try to remember the titles of his works. That will be enough. All right? Okay. Homeland Elegies is a novel by whom? Is it by Mohsin Hamid, Khaled Hosseini, Ayad Akhtar, or is it by Hanif Qureshi? Who wrote Homeland Elegies? This writer is a very famous playwright. Yes, it's by Ayad Akhtar. Ayad Akhtar wrote Homeland Elegies. Can you tell me the other works by Ayad Akhtar? He also wrote Disgraced. Then The Invisible Hand. So why is this writer famous? Why is this writer famous? He's an American playwright, novelist, and screenwriter. He has received numerous accolades, including the 2013 Pulitzer Prize for Drama, as well as nominations for the 2 Tony Awards. So he is a very popular writer in terms of the prize and everything. So why is Akhtar unique in his own ways? He is unique because he is a playwright who talks about various themes, including the American Muslim experience, racism, religion, economics, immigration, and identity. So as you all know very well, that immigration, identity, religion, Islam, all these are very crucial factors in today's world. And Ayad Akhtar very deftly deals with each of these, right? For his work on Broadway, Akhtar received Tony Award for the Best Play nominations for his play Disgraced, that was published in 2015, and also for his play Junk, that came out in 2017. Okay, he also authored the plays The Who and the What and The Invisible Hand. His plays have been produced on Broadway, off-Broadway, and in London. And these are the two novels by Ayad Akhtar. Which ones? American Dervish and Homeland Elegies. Okay? American Dervish is also very, very important. So please try to remember the titles of these novels. Okay? American Dervish and Homeland Elegies. These two are novels by Ayad Akhtar. All right. So let's move on to the next question. Maps for Lost Lovers is a novel by the British Pakistani writer Nadim Aslam. And it was first published by Faber and Faber in 2004. True or false? Who is Nadim Aslam? He's also a British Pakistani novelist, right? Nadim Aslam is also a British Pakistani novelist. He indeed wrote Maps for Lost Lovers. Just know a bit about this writer, that his debut novel, Season of the Rainbirds, won the Betty Trask and Authors Club First Novel Award. So please remember this novel, Season of the Rainbirds by Nadim Aslam. His critically acclaimed second novel, Maps for Lost Lovers, won Encore Award and Kiriyama Prize. It was shortlisted for International Dublin Literary Award, among others. So please remember the titles of these two novels by Nadim Aslam, the Pakistani British novelist. Which two novels? Season of the Rainbirds and Maps for Lost Lovers. Got it? Please remember these two titles at least by Nadim Aslam. Okay, next. Shehan Karunatilaka is a writer from which place? Is he from Sri Lanka, India, Maldives, or none of the above? He's a writer from which place? Because, exams often ask nationalities and birthplaces, birth years as well, right? So we better be aware about this logistics, right? Yes. Shehan Karunatilaka is a writer from Sri Lanka. He's a writer from Sri Lanka. He grew up in Colombo, studied in New Zealand, and has lived and worked in London, Amsterdam, and Singapore. Can anyone tell me the name of his debut novel? His 2010 debut novel? Which one was that? Any idea? Are you all saying anything? Let me see the chat. Which was the debut novel of Shehan Karunatilaka? It was Chinaman, The Legend of Pradeep Matthew, and it won the Commonwealth Book Prize. That was the debut novel of Shehan Karunatilaka, the Sri Lankan writer. Yes, his debut novel, that is his first novel, was, tell me, Chinaman, The Legend of Pradeep Matthew. Okay. And his third novel is also very important. That is The Seven Moons of Mali Almeida. Seven Moons of Mali Almeida. That was his third novel. All right. And yes, it was announced as the winner of the 2022 Booker Prize. The Seven Moons novel. It was the winner of the 2022 Booker Prize. So do look up once again Shehan Karunatilaka. Next. After an arranged marriage to Chanu, a man 20 years older, Nazneen, is taken to London, leaving her home and heart in the Bangladeshi village where she was born. This happens in which novel among the following? Brick Lane, Love Marriage, In the Kitchen, or Alentejo Blue? So one thing we know is that all these are novels by whom? All these are novels by which writer? Obviously, it's by Monica Ali, right? All these are novels by Monica Ali. And these events are happening in which novel? In Brick Lane. Monica Ali's Brick Lane. So Monica Ali is a British writer of Bangladesh and she is a British writer of Bangladeshi and English descent because she actually comes from Bangladesh, right? In 2003, she was selected as one of the best of young British novelists by Granta based on her unpublished manuscript, her debut novel Brick Lane, that was published later that year. And Brick Lane was shortlisted for Man Booker Prize. It was adapted as a 2007 movie of the same name. She has also published 4 other novels. Her 5th novel, Love Marriage, was published by the Virago Press in February 2022. So again, please do look up the years also of the novels of Monica Ali. We all know about Brick Lane, but do look up the other novels as well of Monica Ali because questions often come from her works. So yeah. All right. How is it going so far for all of you? I hope all of you are following, right? Okay. Let me change the chat to everyone. Okay, yeah, it's already there. Okay, good. The Kite Runner is the first novel by Khaled Hosseini, published in Dash by Riverhead Books. It tells the story of Amir, a young boy from the Wazir Akbar Khan district of Kabul. So in which year The Kite Runner was published? 2000, 2003, 2005, or 2007? In which year was it published? Yeah, tell me. And also to tell me the other publication years of his other works after this one. First, tell me this publication year. The Kite Runner was published in 2003. The Kite Runner was published in 2003. 1,000 Splendid Suns was published in which year? 1,000 Splendid Suns was published in which year? 2007. 2007. And The Mountains Echoed was published in which year? And The Mountains Echoed was published in 2000, 2013. 2013. Okay. Sea Prayer is also a work by Khaled Hosseini that was published in which year? 2018. Sea Prayer. Sea Prayer is also a work by Khaled Hosseini. But the major 3 are The Kite Runner, 1,000 Splendid Suns, and The Mountains Echoed. Please revise these publication years all over again before the exam. All right. So The Kite Runner was published in 2003. Okay. Which film of Kurosawa, Akira Kurosawa that is based on Shakespeare's Hamlet? The Bad Sleep Well, Seven Samurai, High and Low, To Live. Akira Kurosawa, I'm sure all of you have watched his movies, at least some of his movies, right? We all know that Throne of Blood is based on Macbeth. Throne of Blood is based on Macbeth. Run is based on King Lear. So which movie is based on Hamlet? It is The Bad Sleep Well. The Bad Sleep Well is a film by Kurosawa and is based on Shakespeare's Hamlet. The Bad Sleep Well is based on Shakespeare's Hamlet. Okay, so please do look up again the movies of Kurosawa. So what are some of the best movies of Kurosawa? Ikiru, Seven Samurai, Throne of Blood, The Hidden Fortress, Wajimbo, High and Low, Red Beard. Okay? These are some of the very important movies by Kurosawa. And the Bad Sleep Well is based on Hamlet. Throne of Blood is based on Macbeth. Run is based on King Lear. So these film adaptations, as you know, are very important. Last time also in net, they asked about movie adaptations, right? So be very careful. Okay. One thing. Just now I told you guys about this movie Red Beard, right? Red Beard by Kurosawa. Okay. So can you tell me which literary work is the source for this movie Red Beard? Which literary work is the source for Kurosawa's movie Red Beard? Red Beard. Dari, beard. I hope all of you are getting the pronunciation right. So tell me, which literary work is the source for Kurosawa's Red Beard movie? Okay, I will tell you. So the source is Fyodor Dostoevsky's novel Humiliated and Insulted. This literary work forms the subplot of this movie very crucially. So, one more information. Kurosawa's Red Beard movie is based on Dostoevsky's novel Humiliated and Insulted. Clear? Are you all following, or have you all just fallen asleep after doing the sessions for almost 5 hours? Okay. Okay. Don't sleep, okay? Yeah. Okay. The Death of Artemio Cruz is an historical fiction novel published in 1962 by Mexican writer Carlos Fuentes. Is it true or false? Latin American writer Carlos Fuentes. Tell me, is it true or false? Latin American writers can also be important. At least 1 or 2 questions can be there. It is true. Carlos Fuentes is a Latin American writer. He wrote The Death of Artemio Cruz, then Aura, then Terra Nostra. Okay. So Carlos Fuentes, Latin American writer. Do look up his works once. Okay, enough. Next, The Feast of the Goat is a 2000 novel by whom? Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Mario Vargas Llosa, Alejo Carpentier, or none? Who wrote The Feast of the Goat? Again, a Latin American writer. Yes, it's by Mario Vargas Llosa. Okay, please do look up these writers just once. That will be enough. Okay, so The Feast of the Goat is an important work by Llosa. Okay, let me see what you all are saying once. Okay, the chat is not opening. Okay. The Feast of the Goat was published in 2000. Please remember the years also, because you never know what NTA will ask. So please remember the years. The Feast of the Goat, year 2000. Okay. Which among the following is a dystopian science fiction story? Clara and the Sun, Victory City, The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, or none of the above? Very important work of a very important writer. You cannot miss this writer. It is Clara and the Sun. Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro is a dystopian science fiction story. Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. So Clara and the Sun is a dystopian science fiction story. Okay. Now I will ask you some publication years. The Remains of the Day. The Remains of the Day was published in, publication years are very important. The Remains of the Day, 1989. 1989. Okay. Tell me. Never Let Me Go is a dash novel by Kazuo Ishiguro. What type of novel is it? Never Let Me Go is a dash novel by Kazuo Ishiguro. What type of novel is it? It's a science fiction novel. Never Let Me Go is a science fiction novel by Kazuo Ishiguro. Clara and the Sun is also a dystopian science fiction story. Okay. Next, tell me, The Buried Giant was published in which year? The Buried Giant. It's a fantasy novel, right? The Buried Giant is a fantasy novel by Kazuo Ishiguro. It was published in 2015. 2015. Okay. It also got the award for the best fantasy novel. Best fantasy novel. So please don't get confused among the genres. There will be dystopian works, science fiction works, fantasy works, right? Don't get confused between the genres. Be very specific about the genres when you are studying about a work. All right? And The Buried Giant was published in 2015. 2015. And don't get confused among the genres. Okay. Which among the first Korean language novel won the International Booker Prize for Fiction in 2016? There is an error in the typing of the question, but yeah. So which was the first Korean language novel which got the International Booker Prize for Fiction in 2016? The Vegetarian, Human Acts, Greek Lessons, I Do Not Bid Farewell. One thing is that yes, all of these are novels by the recent Nobel laureate Han Kang, right? Han Kang is very important for the upcoming exams. And obviously, it was the novel The Vegetarian. The Vegetarian was the first Korean language novel to win the International Booker Prize for Fiction 2016. All right. Which are the other novels? Here I have given you the names. These are other novels by Han Kang like Human Acts, Greek Lessons, I Do Not Bid Farewell, The White Book, We Do Not Part. Okay. These are other works by Han Kang. Han Kang is very important, right? So Han Kang is a South Korean writer. Okay. And this writer rose to international prominence for her novel, The Vegetarian, which became the first Korean language novel to win the International Booker Prize for Fiction in 2016. And in this year, she got the Nobel Prize in Literature, a first for an Asian woman and a Korean. Very important. This year, she got the Nobel Prize in Literature, which is the first thing to happen for an Asian woman and also a Korean. Okay, so Han Kang is very important for the exams. All right. Memories of My Melancholy Wars is a novella by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. True or false? I will ask you about the other novels of Marquez as well. Yes. Memories of My Melancholy Wars is a novella by Marquez. Tell me the publication years of these novels. 100 Years of Solitude. 100 Years of Solitude. Publication year. A very popular novel, you cannot miss out on the years. Magic realist novels of Marquez are very, very important. 100 Years of Solitude published in 1967. 1967. Love in the Time of Cholera was published in Love in the Time of Cholera. 1985. Love in the Time of Cholera. 1985. Chronicle of a Death Foretold. 1981. Chronicle of a Death Foretold. 1981. Until August is a recent work that was published posthumously. Until August was published in 2024. It's a posthumous publication, right? No One Writes to the Colonel. That's also an important work by Marquez, published in 1961. Okay. And you all have read this story in school or in college. A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings. It's a short story by Marquez, right? A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings. We read this short story in Bengali also in school. So short stories can also be important, right? So please look up Marquez once again before the exam. Okay. The Joy Luck Club is a dash novel by Amy Tan. It focuses on our Chinese immigrant families, on four, not our, I'm reading four. It focuses on 4 Chinese immigrant families in San Francisco who start a Mehong club known as a Joy Luck Club. So this novel was published in which year? 1980, 1985, 1987 or 1989? The Joy Luck Club, it's a very popular novel by Amy Tan. Just remember this name and year and it will be enough. It was published in 1989, okay? The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan, published in 1989. 1989, okay? Right. Paula is a 1994 memoir by Dash. And this writer intended to write a straightforward narrative about the darkest experiences of her own life. But the book is a tribute to her deceased daughter, Paula Frias Allende. So you know who the writer is. Who fell into a porphyria-induced coma in 1991 and never recovered. So who can be the writer of this memoir? We already have Allende in the question. So obviously it is Isabel Allende. Isabel Allende wrote this memoir, Paula, that was published in 1994, and it talks about some of the darkest experiences of her life and also her daughter's sufferings, like how she slipped into a coma and never recovered from it. All right. Isabel Allende is also a famous Latin American writer. She wrote The House of the Spirits also, right? The House of the Spirits. So please do look up these Latin American writers once more. Carlos Fuentes, Isabel Allende, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Jorge Luis Borges. Okay? These Latin American writers, just look them up once before the exam. At least one question can be from this area. Okay. Time is a Mother is a 2022 poetry collection by Dash. And the book was shortlisted for the 2023 Griffin Poetry Prize. I have not given any option for this question because tell me the answer just as a no options, nothing. Who wrote this poetry collection? Very famous writer. He wrote On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous. Now you know. You know this work, right? On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous. Why no one is answering for last 3 to 5 minutes? क्या हुआ है? Are you all asleep? It's by Ocean Vuong. Ocean Vuong wrote this poetry collection. Time is a mother. Very, 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 very important writer. Please note down this writer if you do not know him already and look him up, please, before the exam at least once. Look up this writer. Ocean Vuong is very, very important, okay? Ocean Vuong is a Vietnamese American poet. He's a Vietnamese American poet, essayist, and novelist. He is the recipient of the Ruth Lilly Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship. Okay, and his debut novel, On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous, was published in 2019, and he received a MacArthur grant that same year. Ocean Vuong is very, very important, especially his novel, On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous. Okay, we don't have lots of time now to talk about the novel also, but please do look up the summary of the novel at least once, because I have just 10 to 15 more minutes. So we don't have lots of time. I have to cover other questions as well, but please look up this writer. Okay. The Garden of Forking Paths is a 1941 short story by Argentine writer and poet Jorge Luis Borges. I just told you to look up this writer once. So is it true or false? Yes. It is indeed a short story by Jorge Luis Borges. Okay. He was an Argentine short story writer, essayist, poet, and translator. Okay. His best known works are Ficciones, that is fictions, LLF or the LF. Okay. And what are the major themes or motives he has worked with? Dreams, labyrinths, chance, infinity, archives, mirrors, and mythology, and magic realism as well. So if they ask you a question like, who among the following is not associated with magic realism? To answer that question, you need to know the writers who deal with magic realism. Zulfikar Ghosh, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Jorge Luis Borges. These are the popular writers who deal with magic realism in their works. You should know these things genre-wise, okay? Please be very careful about which writer is famous for which genre. Clear? All right. Serious Men is a 2010 drama fiction novel written by Dash. And the story follows Ayan Mani, a middle-aged Dalit working as an assistant to a Brahmin astronomer at the Institute of Theory and Research in Mumbai. So who wrote this novel, Serious Men? Is it by Manu Joseph, Hardik Mehta, Saurabh Shukla, or is it by Sandeep Srivastava? Again, a very important writer. You should read about this writer and his works at least once before the exam, because we cannot take chances, right? Yeah, it's a novel by Manu Joseph. Manu Joseph. Who is Manu Joseph? He is an Indian journalist and writer. Okay, he is the former editor of Open magazine. All right. Okay. Yeah. So his debut novel, Serious Men, that is this novel, it won the Hindu Literary Prize. The Hindu Literary Prizes are very important. Do look up the list of the works which have won the Hindu Literary Prize. Okay. So Serious Men by Manu Joseph, it won the Hindu Literary Prize. And his second novel, The Illicit Happiness of Other People, was published in 2012. So remember these two titles by Manu Joseph, Serious Men and The Illicit Happiness of Other People. Okay, don't forget Manu Joseph, these two writers. These two titles of the same writer. Okay. The Sympathizer is the 2015 debut novel by Vietnamese American professor and writer Viet Thanh Nguyen. It is a best-selling novel and recipient of the 2016 Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. True or false? Just remember the name and the titles of the works. Enough. Is it true or false? True. So, The Sympathizer by Viet Thanh Nguyen. Okay? The Sympathizer by Viet Thanh Nguyen. And Pulitzer Prize for Fiction 2016. Enough. Okay? The Thing About Thugs. This question recently came in West Bengal set also. And you have to read about this author at least once before your exam. So all the important authors who are there in terms of Latin American and Asian literatures, I have brought together all of them. So please look up these Latin American and Asian literature authors at least once if you don't have much time to revise and revise. Okay? Yes. The Thing About Thugs is an odd confection of a novel set mostly in what looks like a late Victorian London. So that's the setting of this novel, The Thing About Thugs. And it is a novel by Tabish Khair. The Thing About Thugs by Tabish Khair. Okay, please look up Tabish Khair once before the exam. So that's all from my side. I really hope you guys will be benefited from these sessions, right? And please do look up these important writers. I have given you almost a list of. Try to remember their important titles and the publication years. Okay, and I guess that will be enough from these sections. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for joining and staying with us till the end. Really, all of you are working so hard, and we will see you again tomorrow. Okay.